The champagne was too cold, the laughter too loud, and the sunset over the Maldivian horizon too perfect. Marcus Whitmore stood on the private terrace of his resort villa, surrounded by people who called themselves his friends, yet he felt more alone than he had in years. "Another toast," shouted Derek, his college roommate turned investment partner, raising his glass with the enthusiasm of someone who'd never known real loss. To Marcus, the man who finally escaped the ball and chain, the group erupted in cheers. Marcus forced a smile, the same practiced expression he'd perfected in countless board meetings. He lifted his glass, the crystal catching the dying light, fragmenting it into 1,000 tiny rainbows that reminded him painfully of the engagement ring he'd slipped off Elena's finger 6 months ago. 6 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days, to be exact. Not that he was counting. The resort was everything money could buy. Overwater bungalows stretching into turquoise infinity, personal butlers attending to every whim, Michelin-starred chefs preparing meals that looked like art. Marcus had booked the entire property for the long Labor Day weekend, filling it with 30 of Manhattan's elite. It was supposed to be a celebration of his freedom, a declaration that he'd moved on from Elena Rodriguez and their 5-year relationship. Yet as the warm Indian Ocean breeze carried the scent of jasmine and salt, all Marcus could think about was how Elena used to close her eyes when the wind touched her face, as if she were memorizing the feeling of being alive. "You good, man?" Derek appeared at his elbow, concern flickering briefly across his perpetually jovial face. "Never better," Marcus lied, taking a long sip of champagne that tasted like expensive regret. "That's what I like to hear. Because Simone over there, the model from Milan, she's been asking about you all evening." Derek waggled his eyebrows suggestively. "And between you and me, I think tonight could be very interesting for you, if you know what I mean." Marcus glanced toward the infinity pool where Simone lounged like a Renaissance painting come to life, her perfectly sculpted body barely contained by a designer bikini that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She caught his eye and smiled, the kind of smile that promised uncomplicated pleasure without messy emotions or painful histories. He should want that. He should walk over there, charm her with the wit that had closed billion-dollar deals, and lose himself in someone new. That's what everyone expected. That's what he'd told himself he needed. But his phone buzzed in his pocket, a specific vibration pattern he'd assigned to only one number, one he'd never been able to bring himself to delete, and his heart stuttered in his chest like an engine failing at altitude. Elena. His hand trembled slightly as he pulled out his phone, and for a moment he just stared at her name on the screen, accompanied by a photo he'd taken of her laughing at the Brooklyn Bridge Park, her dark hair wild in the wind, her eyes bright with the kind of joy that seemed to have vanished from his life the day he'd chosen his company over their future. It was a text message, not a call, which somehow made it worse. "Marcus, I know we haven't spoken since everything, and I wouldn't reach out if it wasn't important. I need you to call me. Please. It's urgent. His breath caught. Elena never used the word urgent. She was the calmest person he'd ever known, the woman who'd held his hand through his father's funeral without shedding a tear in public because she knew he needed her to be his strength. She was the pediatric oncologist who delivered devastating news to families with such grace that they often thanked her even as their worlds crumbled. If Elena said it was urgent, something was catastrophically wrong. "Dude, are you seriously checking your phone right now?" Derek laughed, oblivious. "Come on, man. Whatever it is can wait. This is your weekend to finally let loose." But Marcus was already walking away, his heart pounding, his thumb hovering over Elena's name. The party sounds faded behind him as he made his way down the wooden pathway toward the beach, seeking privacy he suddenly desperately needed. He should call her immediately. But a darker part of him, the part that still ached from their breakup, whispered that maybe this was karma. Maybe she was reaching out because she needed something from him, the way he'd needed her so many times and she'd always been there, until the one time he'd asked her to sacrifice her career for his, and she'd finally said no. The sand was cool beneath his feet as he kicked off his Italian leather loafers, a $2,000 pair he'd bought to celebrate a particularly lucrative merger. Elena had always hated his excessive spending, had argued they could do so much more good with his wealth than just accumulating more expensive things. She'd been right, of course. She'd been right about a lot of things. He dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. With each ring, his anxiety multiplied. What if something had happened to her mother, Carmen, who'd treated him like a son and made him Sunday dinners that tasted like home? What if? "Marcus." Her voice cracked through the line, and he immediately knew this wasn't about her mother or her brother or any of the dozen scenarios he'd imagined. This was about her. "Elena, what's wrong?" He was already calculating flight times back to New York, mentally canceling the weekend, his protective instincts roaring to life despite the months of silence between them. There was a pause, filled with the sound of her breathing and something else. Was she crying? Elena never cried. "I'm at Memorial Hospital," she said finally, each word carefully measured, as if speaking required enormous effort. "There was an accident at the clinic yesterday. A fire. I got most of the children out, but there was smoke, and I went back for Mia. You remember Mia, the little girl with leukemia I told you about? And part of the ceiling collapsed. Ice flooded Marcus's veins. Are you hurt? Elena, how badly are you hurt? I have some burns on my arms and back. Second degree, mostly. That's not why I'm calling." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "They did imaging because of the smoke inhalation and the impact. They found something else, Marcus. Something that was already there." The world tilted on its axis. The beautiful Maldivian sunset, the gentle sound of waves, the distant laughter from his party. Everything faded into meaningless background noise. What did they find? He already knew the answer. Somehow, in the way the universe sometimes whispers its cruelest truths, he already knew. "Stage 3 pancreatic cancer," Elena said, and with those 4 words, Marcus's entire existence shattered into pieces he knew he'd never be able to put back together. "They said I've probably had it for 6 months, maybe longer. The symptoms were there, but I thought it was just stress from the breakup, from the long hours. I ignored it. 6 months. The same amount of time they'd been apart. While he'd been building his empire, while he'd been so focused on becoming one of the youngest billionaires in tech, while he'd been convincing himself that breaking up with her was the right choice for both of them, she'd been dying. "I'm coming home," he said, already running back toward his villa. "I'm getting on the next flight. Don't move, don't do anything. I'll be there in." "Marcus, wait." Her voice stopped him mid-stride. "That's not why I called. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking you to save me. I called because—" She took a shaky breath. "Because today is Labor Day, and I just realized that exactly 1 year ago today, we were supposed to get married." The memory hit him like a physical blow. September of last year, they'd been planning a small ceremony in Central Park. Nothing fancy despite his wealth, because Elena had never cared about extravagance. They'd been going to honeymoon in Costa Rica, where she'd wanted to volunteer at a children's hospital, and he'd planned to finally unplug from work and just be present with the woman he loved. But then the acquisition opportunity had come up, the deal that would make Whitmore Technologies a household name. He'd asked her to postpone the wedding, just for 6 months. Then 6 months had become a year. Then he'd asked her to consider relocating to Singapore for his Asia expansion, and she'd asked him to consider that her patients needed her in New York. The fight that followed had ended with the ring on his desk and Elena walking out of his penthouse, telling him he'd have to choose between building a fortune and building a life, because she couldn't watch him disappear into his ambition anymore. He'd chosen wrong. "I'm dying, Marcus," Elena continued, her voice steadier now, as if she'd made peace with the words. "The doctors say I have maybe 4 to 6 months with aggressive treatment, possibly less. And I realize that I don't want to die with you on the other side of the world, celebrating being free of me. I don't want my last memory of us to be the look on your face when I gave you back the ring." "Don't say that," Marcus choked out, tears streaming down his face in a way they hadn't since his father's death. "Don't talk like you're already gone. We'll fight this. I'll find the best doctors, the best treatments. You'll what? Fix it with money." There was no bitterness in her voice, just a terrible sadness. "Some things can't be fixed, Marcus. Some things you can't buy your way out of. I learned that from loving you." The line went quiet except for their breathing, synchronized across thousands of miles, the way their hearts had once beaten in tandem. "I don't want to die angry at you," Elena finally said. "And I don't want you to live with guilt. So I'm calling to tell you that I forgive you. For the missed dinners, the canceled trips, the way you chose everything else over us. I forgive you, and I need you to forgive yourself. Can you do that?" But Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except stand on a beach in paradise while the woman he'd never stopped loving said goodbye. What would you do if you realized you'd walked away from the one person who mattered most, only to discover time had run out? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Marcus stood frozen on that beach for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, his phone still pressed to his ear, even though Elena had gone silent, waiting for a response he couldn't give. "I can't forgive myself," he finally whispered. "Elena, I can't." "Then I guess we both have to learn to live with impossible things," she replied softly. "Goodbye, Marcus." Wait, but the line went dead, and he was left staring at his phone screen as it faded to black, seeing his own reflection in the glass. A man who'd gained the world and lost everything that mattered. The Marcus Whitmore that most people knew was a carefully constructed masterpiece. At 34, he'd built Whitmore Technologies from a college dorm room idea into a $15 billion empire that revolutionized cloud security. Forbes had called him the golden boy of Silicon Valley East. Business Insider had dubbed him the Midas touch millennial. He'd appeared on the cover of Time magazine with the headline, "The future of tech has a face, and it's younger than you think." But the Marcus Whitmore that Elena had known, that was someone entirely different. With her, he'd been the kid from Queens who'd grown up sharing a bedroom with his two brothers in a cramped apartment above his father's failing bodega. The boy who'd learned to code on a donated computer from the public library because his parents couldn't afford to buy him one. The teenager who'd promised his dying father that he'd make something of himself, that the sacrifices wouldn't be for nothing. Elena had understood that drive because she'd carried a similar fire. She'd grown up in the Bronx, the daughter of immigrants who'd crossed the border with nothing but hope and determination. Her father had worked 3 jobs to put her through school. Her mother had cleaned houses on her hands and knees so Elena could have the textbooks she needed. When Elena had been accepted to Columbia Medical School, her entire neighborhood had celebrated like she'd won the lottery. Because in a way, she had. They'd met 7 years ago at a charity gala that Marcus had attended purely for networking purposes, and Elena had attended because the hospital had required all department heads to make an appearance. He'd been holding court with potential investors, charming them with the easy confidence that came from knowing you were the smartest person in the room. She'd been standing alone by the dessert table, eating chocolate-covered strawberries with the focused intensity of someone who hadn't had time for lunch. "Those are really good," he'd said, approaching her because something about the way she stood apart from the crowd had intrigued him. "Worth the $500 ticket price?" She'd looked at him with those impossibly dark eyes, assessing him in a way that made him feel suddenly transparent. "I wouldn't know. I didn't pay for my ticket. And even if I had, I'd say the money would be better spent on the actual cause rather than on overpriced strawberries and champagne that costs more per bottle than a month's worth of chemotherapy drugs for one of my patients." He'd fallen in love with her in that moment, though it had taken him another 3 months to realize it. Elena had been unlike anyone in his world. She didn't care about his net worth or his connections. She'd never asked him for anything except his time, the one thing he'd never learned to give freely. She'd worked 70-hour weeks at the pediatric oncology ward at Memorial Hospital, holding the hands of dying children and fighting for every extra day, every small miracle. She'd come home exhausted, sometimes still in her scrubs, and curl up against him on the couch, finding peace in his presence even when he was distracted by his laptop and the endless emails that demanded his attention. "You're going to change the world," she used to tell him, running her fingers through his hair in the quiet moments between his crises. "But don't forget to actually live in the world while you're changing it." He hadn't understood what she meant. Not really. Not until now. "Marcus." A voice pulled him from his memories. He turned to find Vanessa Chin, his chief operating officer and one of his oldest friends, walking toward him across the sand. Unlike the other party guests in their designer resort wear, Vanessa looked concerned, her sharp business mind clearly detecting that something was catastrophically wrong. "Derek said you ran off after a phone call. What's going on?" Vanessa had been with him since the early days, when Whitmore Technologies was just 3 people working out of a cramped office in Brooklyn. She'd been the one to push him to take the risks that had paid off spectacularly. She'd also been the one to warn him that he was working himself to death, that he was sacrificing his relationship for quarterly earnings reports. She'd been at the dinner where everything had fallen apart. The night Marcus had asked Elena to move to Singapore for 2 years while he established the Asian market. The night Elena had finally reached her breaking point. I need to go home, Marcus said, his voice sounding hollow even to his own ears. I need to get back to New York. Now, what happened? Vanessa's expression shifted from concern to alarm. Is it your mother? Your brothers? It's Elena. Speaking her name out loud made it real in a way that terrified him. She's sick, Vanessa. Really sick. Cancer. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. She'd liked Elena, had told Marcus repeatedly that he was an idiot for letting her go. At the engagement party they'd thrown 3 years ago, Vanessa had given a toast saying that Elena was the only person who'd ever made Marcus seem fully human. Oh my God, Vanessa breathed. How bad? Stage 3 pancreatic. 4 to 6 months, maybe. He couldn't say the words without his voice breaking. She called to tell me she forgives me. Vanessa, she called to say goodbye. Then you need to go to her. Vanessa was already pulling out her phone. I'll arrange the jet. We can have you in the air within the hour. She doesn't want me there. Marcus turned back toward the ocean, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear below the horizon. She made that clear. She called to give me closure, not to ask me to come back. Since when do you care what anyone else wants when you've made up your mind about something? Vanessa challenged. You've built an empire by refusing to take no for an answer. So why are you standing here instead of fighting for the only thing that actually matters? It was a fair question. Marcus had never been someone who accepted defeat. When investors had said his encryption protocols were impossible, he'd worked 90-hour weeks to prove them wrong. When competitors had tried to crush him with lawsuits and corporate espionage, he'd outmaneuvered them at every turn. He'd built his entire life on the principle that anything could be achieved with enough determination and resources. But this was different. This wasn't a business deal or a technical problem. This was Elena dying, and there was no amount of money or willpower that could change that fundamental reality. What if I go back and it's too late? Marcus said quietly. What if she looks at me and all she sees is the man who broke her heart? What if I make everything worse? What if you don't go back and spend the rest of your life wondering what might have happened if you'd tried? Vanessa countered. Marcus, I've watched you conquer impossible odds for a decade. Don't tell me you're going to give up now, when it actually matters. In his pocket, his phone buzzed again. Another text message, but this time not from Elena. From Carmen, Elena's mother. Marcus, Mijo, I know my daughter told you not to come, but I'm asking you anyway. She's putting on a brave face, but she's terrified. She shouldn't be alone right now, even if she's too proud to admit she needs you. If you ever loved her, please come home. Carmen. The message was followed by another one. P.S. She still wears the necklace you gave her for your first anniversary. Every single day. That should tell you something. Marcus's hand went unconsciously to his own neck, where he wore the matching pendant Elena had given him, a small silver compass with an inscription on the back. So you always find your way home. He'd never taken it off, not even after they'd broken up. It had seemed important to keep wearing it, though he'd never examined why too closely. Maybe he'd always known, on some level, that home wasn't a place. It was her. Get the jet ready, Marcus told Vanessa, his voice suddenly filled with the decisive energy that had built his empire. I need to pack and make some calls. How fast can we get to New York? 14 hours, including refueling, Vanessa said, already typing rapidly on her phone. But Marcus, when you get there, what's your plan? You can't just throw money at this and expect it to be fixed. I know that. He started walking back toward his villa, his mind already racing through possibilities. But I can find the best oncologists in the world. I can access experimental treatments. I can. You can be there, Vanessa interrupted gently. That's what Carmen is asking for. Not your money or your connections. Just you. The words hit him harder than they should have. When had he become the kind of man who thought resources were the solution to everything? When had he stopped understanding that sometimes the most valuable thing he could offer was simply his presence? He knew the answer. It had been gradual, a slow erosion that had started the moment Whitmore Technologies had taken off. Every success had demanded more of his time, more of his focus, more of his soul. And Elena had been patient, so patient, until patience wasn't enough anymore. Back at his villa, Marcus ignored the party still raging by the pool. He threw clothes into a suitcase without looking at what he was packing, his hands moving on autopilot while his mind spun through the catastrophic reality of Elena's diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. 4 to 6 months. He pulled up his browser and started researching with the same obsessive focus he applied to market analysis. Survival rates, abysmal. Treatment options, limited and brutal. Experimental therapies, promising but unproven. His finance-trained mind automatically calculated the odds, and they were worse than any investment he'd ever considered. But this wasn't an investment. This was Elena. His phone rang, an unknown number with a New York area code. Marcus Whitmore, he answered automatically. Mr. Whitmore, this is Dr. Sarah Okonkwo from Memorial Hospital. I'm Dr. Rodriguez's oncologist. The voice was professional but kind, with an accent that suggested Nigerian heritage. Dr. Rodriguez gave me permission to discuss her case with you. I understand she called you earlier this evening. Yes. Marcus sat down heavily on the bed, his legs suddenly unable to support him. Doctor, please tell me there's something that can be done. There has to be something. There are treatment options, Dr. Okonkwo said carefully. But I need you to understand the reality of the situation. Pancreatic cancer at stage 3 is aggressive. The tumor has likely spread to nearby blood vessels and lymph nodes. Surgery isn't an option at this point. We're looking at chemotherapy, possibly radiation, and management of symptoms. What about clinical trials? Experimental drugs? I have the resources to access anything, anywhere in the world. I appreciate that, and we will explore every available option, the doctor assured him. But Mr. Whitmore, I need you to prepare yourself for the likelihood that treatment will buy time, not provide a cure. The average survival rate for stage 3 pancreatic cancer is. Don't tell me statistics. Marcus cut her off, his voice harsher than he intended. Elena isn't a statistic. She's the most extraordinary person I've ever known, and if there's even a 1% chance, I need to know about it. There was a pause on the line. When Dr. Okonkwo spoke again, her voice was gentler. Dr. Rodriguez said you'd react this way. She asked me to tell you something if you called. She said to remind you of what she told you when your father was dying, that sometimes love means accepting what we can't change and making the most of the time we have. Marcus remembered. His father had refused treatment for his heart condition, had decided he'd rather have 3 good months than 6 terrible ones. Elena had supported Marcus through that decision, had helped him understand that his father's choice deserved respect even though it broke Marcus's heart. How much time does she really have? Marcus asked quietly. With aggressive treatment, possibly a year. Maybe more if we're lucky and she responds well. Dr. Okonkwo sighed. Without treatment, probably less than 6 months. But Mr. Whitmore, you should know, she's refusing treatment. The world stopped spinning. What do you mean she's refusing treatment? She says she's seen too many of her young patients suffer through chemotherapy to be willing to put herself through the same ordeal for a minimal chance of success. She wants to spend whatever time she has left living, not dying slowly in a hospital bed. That's insane, Marcus exploded, standing up and pacing. She can't just give up. That's not who she is. Actually, Mr. Whitmore, this is exactly who she is, Dr. Okonkwo said firmly. Dr. Rodriguez has spent her career helping families make impossible choices. She understands the reality of cancer treatment better than most people ever will. This is her informed decision, and as her doctor, I have to respect it. I'm calling you because she listed you as her emergency contact and her healthcare proxy, which means if she becomes unable to make decisions for herself, the responsibility falls to you. She still has me listed? Marcus's voice cracked. Even after everything? She never changed it, the doctor confirmed. Whatever happened between you two, Mr. Whitmore, you should know that you still matter to her. Very much. And right now, I think she needs you more than she's willing to admit. After the call ended, Marcus sat in silence, staring at the engagement ring he'd kept in his wallet for the past 6 months. He'd told himself he kept it for tax purposes. It was a valuable asset, after all. But that had been a lie. He'd kept it because some part of him had always believed that someday, somehow, he'd find his way back to her. He just hadn't imagined it would be like this. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Derek stood in the doorway, concerned and slightly drunk. Bro, people are asking where you went. Are you okay? I'm leaving, Marcus said simply, zipping up his suitcase. There's an emergency in New York. You're in charge of the party. Do whatever you want. It's all paid for. Leaving. Marcus, we just got here yesterday. What kind of emergency? Derek's eyes widened as he registered the tears on Marcus's face. Holy shit, man. What happened? Elena's dying. Saying it out loud to someone else made it feel more real, more final. Cancer. Stage 3. 4 to 6 months, and she's refusing treatment. Oh fuck. Derek, for once in his life, looked completely sober. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I know I gave you shit about her, but I know you loved her. Still love her. I never stopped, Marcus admitted. I just convinced myself that success mattered more than love. And now she's dying, and I can't fix it. I can't buy her more time. I can't do anything except watch her disappear. So what are you going to do? Marcus looked down at the ring in his hand, the 3-carat diamond catching the light. He'd chosen it so carefully, had it custom designed to match Elena's simple, elegant taste. She'd worn it for 2 years before giving it back. I'm going to go home, he said finally. And I'm going to be there for her, whether she wants me there or not. Because if I only have months left with her, I'm not going to waste a single day. He looked out the window at the perfect paradise he'd created for himself. The resort, the party, the life he'd built without her. It all looked suddenly hollow, like a beautiful stage set with nothing behind it. Elena had been right. He'd spent so long building an empire that he'd forgotten to build a life. But he still had time to change that. Not much time, but enough. It would have to be enough. The private jet touched down at Teterboro Airport at 6:30 in the morning, slicing through clouds heavy with the promise of rain. Marcus hadn't slept during the 14-hour flight. He'd spent the entire time on his laptop and phone, researching oncologists, treatment facilities, and experimental trials with the same intensity he'd once applied to hostile takeovers. Vanessa had accompanied him back, despite his protests that she should stay and manage the resort situation. You're not doing this alone, she'd said firmly, settling into the seat across from him. Besides, someone needs to handle the company while you handle what actually matters. Now, as the car service navigated through early morning Manhattan traffic toward Memorial Hospital, Marcus felt his carefully constructed plan beginning to crumble. What was he supposed to say to Elena? How did you tell someone you'd walked away from that you wanted to be there while they died? His phone had been buzzing constantly with messages. Derek updating him on the resort. His mother, who'd somehow heard the news through the mysterious network of Queen's mothers who knew everything. His brothers, offering support in their own awkward ways. Board members wanting to know when he'd be back for the quarterly review. He'd ignored them all except for one message from Carmen. She's in room 847. She doesn't know you're coming. Marcus, she's so scared, even though she won't show it. Thank you for coming home. The hospital smelled exactly as Marcus remembered from visiting Elena during her residency years. Antiseptic and artificial air freshener, failing to mask something deeper and more unsettling. He'd always hated hospitals, the way they reminded him of his father's final days. But Elena had moved through these halls like an angel, bringing comfort to families facing their darkest hours. Now she was on the other side of that equation, and the injustice of it made him want to tear the world apart. Room 847 was in the oncology wing, naturally. Marcus stood outside the door for a full minute, his hand raised to knock, paralyzed by uncertainty. Through the small window, he could see her, Elena, sitting up in bed, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a hospital gown that made her look impossibly fragile. She was reading a medical journal, because of course she was. Even facing her own mortality, she was still learning, still fighting to help her patients. He knocked softly. Elena looked up, and when she saw him through the window, her eyes went wide with shock. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then slowly, she set down the journal and nodded, permission or resignation, he couldn't tell which. Marcus pushed open the door and stepped into the room that would change everything. You came, Elena said, her voice neutral, revealing nothing. She looked thinner than he remembered, with shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and pain she wouldn't acknowledge. But she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Did you really think I wouldn't? Marcus stayed near the door, afraid that if he got too close, she'd ask him to leave. I told you not to, she pointed out. I called to give you closure, Marcus. Not to make you feel obligated. Obligated. The word came out harsher than he intended. Elena, you're not an obligation. You're. He stopped, struggling to find words adequate for what she was. You're everything. She looked away, blinking rapidly. Don't do that. Don't say things that sound like love when we both know you chose your company over us. I've made peace with that decision. You should too. I chose wrong. Marcus took a step closer, then another, drawn to her like gravity. I've known it every single day for the past 6 months. I just didn't know how to admit it until I was dying? Elena's laugh was bitter. That's convenient timing, don't you think? Where was this revelation when I needed you at my brother's wedding, or when I asked you to come to the clinic's fundraiser, or any of the 1,000 times I begged you to just be present. You're right. Marcus pulled a chair to her bedside, sitting down heavily. I was an idiot. A blind, selfish idiot who thought building an empire mattered more than building a life with you. And now you're sick, and I can't fix it, and I hate myself more than you could possibly imagine. I don't hate you, Elena said softly, finally meeting his eyes. That's the problem, Marcus. I should hate you. It would be so much easier if I did. But I don't. I'm just tired. So tired of caring about someone who couldn't care back the same way. I did care. I do care. Marcus reached for her hand, then stopped, unsure if he still had the right to touch her. Elena, I never stopped loving you. Not for a single second. Love isn't enough if you don't show up, she replied, but she didn't pull away when he finally took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that felt like coming home. I needed a partner, Marcus. Someone who would be there for the boring Tuesday nights and the exhausting weekends. Not just someone who sent expensive gifts from business trips and made promises he couldn't keep. Before Marcus could respond, the door opened and Carmen Rodriguez swept in carrying a bag from Elena's favorite bakery, the Puerto Rican place in the Bronx that made pastéis de guayaba that tasted like childhood memories. Carmen stopped short when she saw Marcus, and her face crumpled with relief. Mijo, she breathed, setting down the bag and pulling Marcus into a fierce hug that smelled like vanilla and strength. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Mommy, you called him, didn't you? Elena's voice carried a mix of exasperation and something else, maybe hope, carefully hidden. Of course I called him, Carmen said unapologetically, switching to rapid Spanish that Marcus had learned to understand during their relationship. You think I'm going to let you go through this alone because of stubborn pride? You love this man. He loves you. Life is too short for this foolishness. Mommy. No, Mija. Listen to me. Carmen sat on the edge of Elena's bed, taking her daughter's other hand. When your father was dying, what did he tell us? He said don't waste time on anger or regrets. He said life is too precious to spend it being right instead of being happy. She turned to Marcus. You broke my daughter's heart. That's true. But she's dying now, and hearts don't matter if they're not beating. So you both need to decide, do you want to waste whatever time is left, or do you want to actually live it? The room fell silent except for the steady beep of Elena's monitors. Marcus watched emotions flicker across Elena's face, anger, fear, longing, resistance. She'd always been terrible at hiding what she felt, at least from him. I'm not asking you to save me, Elena finally said, looking directly at Marcus. Dr. Okonkwo told me you've already started researching treatments. I know you, Marcus. You're probably planning to fly in specialists from Switzerland and fund some experimental trial at Johns Hopkins. Would that be so terrible? Marcus challenged. Elena, you're refusing treatment. You're just giving up. I'm not giving up, she said firmly. I'm choosing quality over quantity. I've held the hands of too many children while they vomited from chemotherapy, while they lost their hair and their dignity and their joy, all for a few extra months of suffering. I won't do that to myself. I won't spend whatever time I have left feeling like a ghost. So what's your plan? Just wait to die. My plan is to live, Elena said fiercely, fire sparking in her eyes, the same fire that had made Marcus fall in love with her. Really live. Not just survive, but actually experience joy and beauty and meaning. I want to see the ocean. I want to dance, even if my body hurts. I want to eat meals that taste like something other than hospital food. I want to laugh with my friends and hug my mother and maybe, just maybe, make peace with the fact that I'm 32 years old and I'm never going to cure cancer or raise children or grow old. Her voice broke on the last words, and suddenly she was crying deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Carmen immediately wrapped her arms around her daughter, murmuring comfort in Spanish, and Marcus felt like an intruder witnessing something too intimate, too raw. But he couldn't leave, wouldn't leave. So he just sat there, holding Elena's hand while she fell apart, offering the only thing he had left to give, his presence. When the storm of tears finally subsided, Elena pulled away from her mother and wiped her eyes, looking embarrassed. Sorry. I promised myself I wouldn't do that. You're allowed to cry, Marcus said gently. You're allowed to be angry and scared and whatever else you're feeling. You don't have to be brave all the time. Yes, I do, Elena whispered. If I stop being brave, I'll just be terrified, and I can't. She took a shaky breath. I can't live like that. Not for however long I have left. A knock on the door interrupted them. Dr. Okonkwo entered, followed by a younger Dr. Marcus didn't recognize. The oncologist's expression was professionally neutral, but Marcus had learned to read faces in boardrooms, and he saw concern in the tightness around her eyes. Dr. Rodriguez, Mr. Whitmore, Mrs. Rodriguez, Dr. Okonkwo greeted them. I have the results from this morning's scans, and we need to discuss them. It's worse, isn't it? Elena said calmly, as if she were discussing someone else's diagnosis. The tumor has grown. Actually, that's not the issue. Dr. Okonkwo pulled up images on the room's computer screen. Cross-sections of Elena's body that looked like abstract art to Marcus, but clearly meant something to the doctors. The pancreatic tumor is approximately the same size as yesterday. But we found something else in the imaging. Something we initially missed because we weren't looking for it. Marcus's blood ran cold. What do you mean, something else? The younger doctor, his badge identified him as Dr. James Kim, cardiology, stepped forward. Mrs. Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez, Elena corrected automatically. I didn't spend 4 years of medical school and 5 years of residency to be called Mrs. My apologies. Dr. Rodriguez, the imaging showed an abnormality in your left ventricular wall. We followed up with an echocardiogram and found evidence of severe cardiomyopathy, weakening of the heart muscle. Combined with some arrhythmias we've noticed on your monitors, this is concerning. How concerning? Elena's voice remained steady, but Marcus felt her hand tighten around his. Dr. Kim and Dr. Okonkwo exchanged a glance. Given the location and extent of the damage, combined with your cancer diagnosis, we're looking at a significantly shortened timeline. The heart weakness means you're at high risk for sudden cardiac failure. How much time? Marcus demanded. In plain English, how much time does she have? Without intervention, possibly weeks rather than months, Dr. Okonkwo said gently. The combination of the cancer and the heart condition is creating a cascading effect. Dr. Rodriguez, I know you've refused treatment for the cancer, but the heart condition is something we can potentially address. There are medications that could strengthen the heart muscle, possibly buy you more time. Time for what? Elena asked, and Marcus heard the devastation she was trying to hide. Time to still die of cancer in a slightly different timeline. Time to be a little less dead. Time to say goodbye, Carmen said softly, tears streaming down her face. Mija, please. Just a little more time. Elena closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she looked directly at Marcus. Is that what you want? More time to watch me deteriorate? More time to feel guilty? The champagne was too cold, the laughter too loud, and the sunset over the Maldivian horizon too perfect. Marcus Whitmore stood on the private terrace of his resort villa, surrounded by people who called themselves his friends, yet he felt more alone than he had in years. Another toast, shouted Derek, his college roommate turned investment partner, raising his glass with the enthusiasm of someone who'd never known real loss. To Marcus, the man who finally escaped the ball and chain. The group erupted in cheers. Marcus forced a smile, the same practiced expression he'd perfected in countless board meetings. He lifted his glass, the crystal catching the dying light, fragmenting it into 1,000 tiny rainbows that reminded him painfully of the engagement ring he'd slipped off Elena's finger 6 months ago. 6 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days to be exact. Not that he was counting. The resort was everything money could buy. Overwater bungalows stretching into turquoise infinity, personal butlers attending to every whim, Michelin-starred chefs preparing meals that looked like art. Marcus had booked the entire property for the long Labor Day weekend, filling it with 30 of Manhattan's elite. It was supposed to be a celebration of his freedom, a declaration that he'd moved on from Elena Rodriguez and their 5-year relationship. Yet as the warm Indian Ocean breeze carried the scent of jasmine and salt, all Marcus could think about was how Elena used to close her eyes when the wind touched her face, as if she were memorizing the feeling of being alive. You good, man? Derek appeared at his elbow, concern flickering briefly across his perpetually jovial face. Never better, Marcus lied, taking a long sip of champagne that tasted like expensive regret. That's what I like to hear. Because Simone over there, the model from Milan, she's been asking about you all evening. Derek waggled his eyebrows suggestively. And between you and me, I think tonight could be very interesting for you, if you know what I mean. Marcus glanced toward the infinity pool where Simone lounged like a Renaissance painting come to life, her perfectly sculpted body barely contained by a designer bikini that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She caught his eye and smiled, The kind of smile that promised uncomplicated pleasure without messy emotions or painful histories. He should want that. He should walk over there, charm her with the wit that had closed billion-dollar deals, and lose himself in someone new. That's what everyone expected. That's what he'd told himself he needed. But his phone buzzed in his pocket. A specific vibration pattern he'd assigned to only one number, one he'd never been able to bring himself to delete, and his heart stuttered in his chest like an engine failing at altitude. Elena. His hand trembled slightly as he pulled out his phone, and for a moment he just stared at her name on the screen, accompanied by a photo he'd taken of her laughing at the Brooklyn Bridge Park, her dark hair wild in the wind, her eyes bright with the kind of joy that seemed to have vanished from his life the day he'd chosen his company over their future. It was a text message, not a call, which somehow made it worse. Asterisk, Marcus, I know we haven't spoken since everything, and I wouldn't reach out if it wasn't important. I need you to call me. Please. It's urgent. Asterisk. His breath caught. Elena never used the word urgent. She was the calmest person he'd ever known. The woman who'd held his hand through his father's funeral without shedding a tear in public because she knew he needed her to be his strength. She was the pediatric oncologist who delivered devastating news to families with such grace that they often thanked her even as their worlds crumbled. If Elena said it was urgent, something was catastrophically wrong. Dude, are you seriously checking your phone right now? Derek laughed, oblivious. Come on, man. Whatever it is can wait. This is your weekend to finally let loose. But Marcus was already walking away, his heart pounding, his thumb hovering over Elena's name. The party sounds faded behind him as he made his way down the wooden pathway toward the beach, seeking privacy he suddenly desperately needed. He should call her immediately. But a darker part of him, the part that still ached from their breakup, whispered that maybe this was karma. Maybe she was reaching out because she needed something from him, the way he'd needed her so many times and she'd always been there, until the one time he'd asked her to sacrifice her career for his, and she'd finally said no. The sand was cool beneath his feet as he kicked off his Italian leather loafers, a $2,000 pair he'd bought to celebrate a particularly lucrative merger. Elena had always hated his excessive spending, had argued they could do so much more good with his wealth than just accumulating more expensive things. She'd been right, of course. She'd been right about a lot of things. He dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. With each ring, his anxiety multiplied. What if something had happened to her mother, Carmen, who'd treated him like a son and made him Sunday dinners that tasted like home? What if? Marcus. Her voice cracked through the line, and he immediately knew this wasn't about her mother or her brother or any of the dozen scenarios he'd imagined. This was about her. Elena, what's wrong? He was already calculating flight times back to New York, mentally canceling the weekend, his protective instincts roaring to life despite the months of silence between them. There was a pause, filled with the sound of her breathing and something else. Was she crying? Elena never cried. I'm at Memorial Hospital, she said finally, each word carefully measured, as if speaking required enormous effort. There was an accident at the clinic yesterday. A fire. I got most of the children out, but there was smoke, and I went back for Mia. You remember Mia, the little girl with leukemia I told you about? And part of the ceiling collapsed. Ice flooded Marcus's veins. Are you hurt? Elena, how badly are you hurt? I have some burns on my arms and back. 2nd degree, mostly. That's not why I'm calling. Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. They did imaging because of the smoke inhalation and the impact. They found something else, Marcus. Something that was already there. The world tilted on its axis. The beautiful Maldivian sunset, the gentle sound of waves, the distant laughter from his party. Everything faded into meaningless background noise. What did they find? He already knew the answer. Somehow, in the way the universe sometimes whispers its cruelest truths, he already knew. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer, Elena said, and with those 4 words, Marcus's entire existence shattered into pieces he knew he'd never be able to put back together. They said I've probably had it for 6 months, maybe longer. The symptoms were there, but I thought it was just stress from the breakup, from the long hours. I ignored it. I want every second I can get with you, Marcus said fiercely. I want a lifetime, but I'll take whatever I can have. Hours, days, weeks, I'll take it all. And I'll spend every single moment showing you that I love you, that I never stopped, that I'm done being the man who chose wrong. This isn't a romantic gesture, Marcus, Elena said, But there was something in her voice, a crack in the armor she'd built around herself. You can't fix this by being here. You can't make this better. I know. Marcus stood up, moving closer to her bed, still holding her hand like a lifeline. But I can be here anyway. I can hold your hand when you're scared. I can bring you terrible coffee and argue with your doctors and make sure you're not alone. That's all I'm asking for, the chance to be here. Not to fix anything. Just to be present for once in my damn life. Mr. Whitmore makes a good point, Dr. Okonkwo interjected. Dr. Rodriguez, your prognosis is serious regardless of what we do. But you have choices about how you spend whatever time remains. You can spend it alone, refusing help and trying to maintain control. Or you can spend it surrounded by people who love you, accepting support, and actually living the way you told me you wanted to. Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring at the medical images on the screen, the visual evidence of her body's betrayal. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. If I agree to the heart medications, she said slowly, I'm not promising anything else. No chemotherapy, no radiation, no experimental treatments that will make me feel worse than the disease itself. Just enough to stabilize the heart and give me time to do what I need to do. That's your choice to make, Dr. Okonkwo confirmed. We'll respect whatever you decide. Then let's do it. Elena took a deep breath. But I'm not staying in this hospital. If I have weeks instead of months, I'm not spending them in a room that smells like bleach and sadness. I want to go home. I'll arrange for home health care, Dr. Okonkwo said immediately. We can have nurses and equipment delivered by tomorrow. But Dr. Rodriguez, you'll need someone with you at all times. The risk of sudden cardiac failure is real. You can't be alone. I'll be there, Carmen said immediately. We'll take shifts, Marcus added. Her mother, me, her brother when he can get away from work. She won't be alone. Elena looked between them, and for the first time since Marcus had entered the room, she smiled, a small, sad smile that broke his heart and put it back together simultaneously. You two have this all figured out, don't you? She said. Just completely took over my life without asking. That's what families do, Mija, Carmen said firmly. We show up when it matters. But Marcus isn't family anymore, Elena pointed out, though her hand was still in his, her thumb absently stroking across his knuckles in a gesture that was achingly familiar. We broke up. He walked away. I came back, Marcus said simply. And I'm not walking away again. Not now, not ever. I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you never forgive me. I'm here, Elena. For whatever you need, however long you'll let me stay. That's a nice speech, Elena said, pulling her hand away finally, creating distance he felt like a physical wound. But you don't know what you're signing up for. You don't know what it's going to be like watching someone die. It's not romantic or noble. It's ugly and painful and horrible, and I don't want you here out of guilt or obligation or some misguided attempt at redemption. Then why do you want me here? Marcus challenged. Because your mother called me. Because you kept me as your emergency contact. Because you still wear the necklace I gave you. He reached out and touched the silver pendant at her throat, the twin to his own. Tell me you want me to leave, Elena. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't want me here, and I'll go. But if there's any part of you that wants me to stay, I'm begging you to let me. The room was silent except for the beeping monitors and Carmen's quiet sniffling. Elena stared at Marcus, her dark eyes searching his face for something. Truth, perhaps, or sincerity, or maybe just the man she'd once loved beneath the billionaire he'd become. I don't want you to stay out of guilt, she finally said. If you're going to be here, I need you to be here because you actually want to be. Not because you're trying to assuage your conscience or play the hero. I need you to be real with me, Marcus. Can you do that? Yes, Marcus said without hesitation. I can be real. I can be whatever you need. Then I need you to understand something. Elena's voice was steady now, the doctor returning, clinical and clear. I'm going to die. Maybe in a few weeks, maybe a few months if we're lucky. But I'm going to die, and there's nothing you or your money or your connections can do about it. If you stay, you're going to watch me get weaker. You're going to see me in pain. You're going to witness everything I've tried to protect people from my entire career. Are you sure you want that? Marcus thought about the easy answer, the reassurance, the promise that he could handle anything. But Elena had asked for real, so he gave her truth. I'm terrified, he admitted. I'm terrified of losing you, of watching you suffer, of not being enough. But I'm more terrified of not being here. Of letting you go through this alone because I was too scared to face it. So yes, I want to stay. Not because I'm brave enough, but because I love you too much to do anything else. Something shifted in Elena's expression, a softening, a crack in the wall she'd built between them. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Okay, she whispered. Okay, you can stay. But Marcus, if this gets too hard, if you need to leave, I need you to promise you'll be honest about it. Don't stay out of guilt if it becomes too much. I promise, Marcus lied, because they both knew he would never leave, no matter how hard it got. Dr. Okonkwo cleared her throat. I'll leave you all to discuss the logistics of home care. Dr. Rodriguez, we'll start the cardiac medications today and monitor you for 24 hours before discharge. Mr. Whitmore, if you have a moment, I'd like to speak with you privately about what to expect. Marcus followed the doctor into the hallway, leaving Elena with her mother. As soon as the door closed, his composure cracked. How bad is it really? He asked. Without the medical jargon, without trying to be gentle. How much time does she have? Dr. Okonkwo sighed, looking suddenly exhausted. Mr. Whitmore, I've been an oncologist for 15 years. I've seen a lot of patients die. But Dr. Rodriguez is special. She's one of the best pediatric oncologists I've ever worked with. She saves lives every day. And now I can't save hers, and it's one of the hardest things I've ever faced. That's not an answer. Because there isn't a good answer, the doctor said. The honest truth. With the heart condition and the cancer, she probably has a month, maybe 6 weeks if the medications work well. Every day after that is borrowed time. The cancer is aggressive, and the heart weakness will accelerate the decline. She'll have good days and bad days, but the trajectory is only going in one direction. A month. 6 weeks at most. That was all the time he had left with the woman he loved. What do I do? Marcus asked, feeling helpless in a way he'd never experienced in business. How do I make this bearable for her? You be present, doctor. Okonkwo said simply. You listen. You don't try to fix everything. You let her have control over what she can control, and you support her choices even when they're not what you'd choose. And Mr. Whitmore? You forgive yourself, because she's going to need you to be strong, and you can't be strong if you're drowning in guilt. Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. In the window of Elena's room, he could see her talking with her mother, both of them crying now, holding each other in shared grief and love. He'd built a $15 billion company from nothing. He'd revolutionized an entire industry. He'd been called a genius, a visionary, a man who could do anything. But he couldn't save the one person who mattered most. All he could do was be there while she slipped away. And somehow, that would have to be enough. The next 3 days passed in a blur of medical preparations, logistics, and careful conversations that danced around the enormous truth nobody wanted to acknowledge. Elena was dying, and time was running out faster than any of them had anticipated. Marcus had effectively moved into Elena's apartment in Washington Heights, the same modest 2-bedroom she'd refused to leave even when he'd offered to buy her a penthouse in Manhattan. This is my neighborhood, she'd told him years ago. These are my people. I'm not abandoning them just because I'm dating someone with money. He'd thought she was being stubborn then. Now he understood she'd been being herself, rooted, principled, loyal to the community that had raised her. The apartment was exactly as he remembered. Walls covered with children's artwork from her patients, shelves overflowing with medical journals and novels in English and Spanish, the small kitchen where she'd taught him to make arroz con gandals on lazy Sunday mornings. Being here felt like stepping into a time machine, back to when they'd been happy, before his ambition had devoured everything good in his life. Carmen had claimed the second bedroom, transforming it into a command center of sorts. She'd organized a rotation of neighbors who brought food, coordinated with the home healthcare nurses, and generally managed the logistics of dying with the same fierce efficiency she'd once used to manage Elena's childhood. Marcus had taken the couch, though he barely slept. He spent his nights listening for any sound from Elena's room, terrified he'd miss something important. During the day, he worked remotely, taking video calls from the small balcony while trying to pretend his world wasn't imploding. Vanessa had taken over day-to-day operations at Whitmore Technologies, and to Marcus's surprise, the company hadn't collapsed without him. If anything, it was running more smoothly. She'd even secured 2 new contracts he'd been negotiating for months. Turns out the business doesn't actually need you hovering over every decision, Vanessa had told him on a video call, her tone a mix of triumph and gentle reproach. Maybe if you'd learned that sooner, you'd have had more time for what actually mattered. She wasn't wrong. It was late afternoon on the fourth day when everything shifted. Marcus was in the kitchen making Elena's favorite tea, a special blend from the Dominican shop on 181st Street that tasted like cinnamon and home, when he heard her bedroom door open. Elena emerged wearing actual clothes for the first time since coming home from the hospital, jeans and a soft purple sweater that brought out the golden undertones in her brown skin. She'd put on makeup, and her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders. She looked almost like the woman he remembered, except for the pallor beneath her foundation and the way she moved carefully, as if her body were made of glass. "You're up," Marcus said, trying to keep the worry out of his voice. She'd spent most of the past 3 days sleeping, the medications making her drowsy and the illness making everything exhausting. "I'm tired of being a patient in my own home," Elena said, lowering herself onto the couch with a wince she tried to hide. "I want to actually do something. Live like I said I would. What do you want to do?" Marcus brought her the tea, sitting in the armchair across from her, close enough to help if needed, far enough to give her space. Elena took a sip of the tea, and her eyes closed in pleasure. "You remembered the exact blend." "I remember everything about you," Marcus said quietly. She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd arrived. "You look terrible. When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep." "No, you don't. I can hear you pacing at night." Elena set down her tea. "Marcus, you can't take care of me if you're running yourself into the ground." "I'm fine. You're a terrible liar." She patted the couch beside her. "Come sit here. Actually sit, not hover like you're waiting for me to collapse." Marcus moved to the couch, leaving a careful distance between them. But Elena shifted closer, erasing the gap, and suddenly they were sitting the way they used to, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, two puzzle pieces that had always fit together perfectly. "I missed this," Elena murmured. "I missed you." Marcus's throat tightened. "I missed you too. Every single day." They sat in silence for a moment, just breathing together, and Marcus felt something unodd in his chest. This was what he'd lost when he'd chosen his company over their relationship. These quiet moments of connection that couldn't be quantified or optimized or turned into profit. "I have a list," Elena said suddenly, pulling away to look at him. "Things I want to do before I can't anymore. Dr. Okonkwo says I probably have a few weeks where I'll feel okay-ish before things get really bad. I don't want to waste them." "Tell me," Marcus said. "Whatever you want to do, we'll make it happen." Elena pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. "Okay, so I know some of these are impossible given the time constraints, but I figured I'd write down everything and then figure out what's actually doable." She started reading. "See the ocean one more time. Dance at a club like I'm 25 again. Eat at that Michelin-starred restaurant you always wanted to take me to. Go to the Met and spend hours in front of my favorite paintings. Have a picnic in Central Park. Watch the sunrise from the Brooklyn Bridge. Finish reading the novel I started 3 years ago. Make peace with my father's grave. Tell my patients goodbye. Kiss someone in the rain." Her voice caught on the last item, and she looked up at Marcus with eyes that held a question she wasn't quite brave enough to ask. "We can do all of that," Marcus said, his mind already racing through logistics. "We'll start tomorrow. Where do you want to begin?" "The ocean," Elena said immediately. "I want to feel sand between my toes and taste salt air. I want to remember what it feels like to stand at the edge of something vast and beautiful. Then we'll go to the ocean." Marcus pulled out his own phone, already searching for options. "Montauk, the Hamptons? We could take a helicopter, be there in an hour. Or we could drive," Elena countered. "Take our time. Stop at roadside diners. Actually experience the journey instead of just arriving at the destination." She looked at him meaningfully. "That was always our problem, wasn't it? You were so focused on getting to the next milestone that you forgot to enjoy where you were." The truth of it stung, but Marcus nodded. "You're right. So we'll drive. Tomorrow morning, if you're feeling up to it." "I'll be up to it," Elena said with determination. "I'm done letting this disease dictate my life. I'm taking back control of whatever time I have left." Before Marcus could respond, the apartment door opened and Elena's younger brother, Miguel, burst in carrying grocery bags and radiating the kind of barely controlled panic Marcus recognized from his own reflection. "Lena." Miguel dropped the bags and rushed to the couch, pulling his sister into a fierce hug. "Mommy told me you were home, but I couldn't get away from work until now. Why didn't you call me? I would have left the restaurant immediately." "Because you just got promoted to sous chef," Elena said, hugging him back just as tightly. I'm not going to ruin that for you by being dramatic. You have cancer, Miguel said flatly. You're allowed to be dramatic. He pulled back, his eyes red. And heart problems too? Lena, what the hell? Bad luck and worse genetics. Elena tried to joke, but her voice wavered. Miguel noticed Marcus for the first time, and his expression hardened. What's he doing here? Miguel, Elena started. No, seriously. This is the guy who broke your heart, who made you cry for months, who chose his company over you. And now he's just back because you're dying? That's convenient. Miguel, stop, Elena said firmly. Marcus is here because I want him here. Because he's... She paused, searching for words. Because he matters to me. Still, he had his chance to matter, Miguel shot back. He blew it. You're right, Marcus said, standing up to face the younger man. I did blow it. I was selfish and stupid, and I hurt your sister in ways I'll never forgive myself for. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving. So you can hate me, you have every right to, but you're going to have to get used to seeing me around. Miguel looked like he wanted to punch him. Instead, he turned to Elena. Is this really what you want? Him here, playing the devoted boyfriend now that there's an expiration date. Yes, Elena said quietly. It's what I want. Miguel, I know you're angry. I know you want to protect me. But I'm 32 years old, and I'm dying, and I don't have time for grudges or pride. Marcus made mistakes. I made mistakes too. We both chose our careers over each other, and we both paid for it. But right now I need him. Can you accept that? Miguel's jaw worked, emotions warring across his face. Finally, he sighed. Fine. But if he hurts you again, I don't care how many billions he has. I'll make him regret it. Fair enough, Marcus agreed. The tension broken, Miguel joined them on the couch, and for the next hour, they talked. Miguel shared stories from the restaurant, making Elena laugh with impressions of the temperamental head chef. Carmen came home with more food from the neighbors, fussing over everyone. It felt almost normal, like a regular family evening, except for the elephant in the room that nobody wanted to acknowledge. As the evening wore on, Elena grew quieter, her energy visibly flagging. Marcus noticed before anyone else, attuned to every shift in her breathing, every wince she tried to hide. You should rest, he said gently during a lull in conversation. I don't want to rest, Elena protested, but even as she said it, her eyes were drooping. I've spent the last 3 days resting. I want to be present. I want to be here with my family. We'll still be here tomorrow, Carmen said, standing up and offering her hand to her daughter. Come on, Mija. Let's get you to bed. I can do it myself, Elena said, but when she tried to stand, her legs buckled. Marcus caught her before she could fall, lifting her easily into his arms. I've got you, he murmured. Elena didn't protest, just rested her head against his chest as he carried her to the bedroom. Miguel watched with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Maybe resentment, maybe grudging approval. In the bedroom, Marcus set Elena gently on the bed. She kept her arms around his neck, not letting him pull away. Stay, she whispered. Just for a few minutes. I don't want to be alone. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, and Elena shifted so her head was in his lap. He stroked her hair the way he used to, and felt her relax under his touch. Marcus. Yeah. I'm scared. Her voice was so small, so unlike the strong woman he knew. I'm so scared, and I hate being scared. I've spent my whole career helping other people be brave, and now I can't find that courage for myself. You're the bravest person I know, Marcus said fiercely. You're facing this with more grace than anyone could ask for. I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm being cheated. I had plans, Marcus. I was going to start a free clinic in the Bronx. I was going to travel to Guatemala and work with Doctors Without Borders. I was going to fall in love again, maybe have kids someday. And now none of that is going to happen, and I'm just angry. So angry that my body is betraying me. You're allowed to be angry, Marcus said. You're allowed to feel however you need to feel. What do you feel? Elena asked, looking up at him. When you think about me dying, what do you feel? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, trying to find honest words for the howling void inside him. I feel like I'm being punished for every wrong choice I made. Like the universe is taking away the one perfect thing in my life because I didn't appreciate it when I had it. And I feel rage, Elena. Rage at the cancer, at fate, at God if he exists. Because you don't deserve this. You've spent your whole life saving children, and it's not fair that you don't get saved in return. Life isn't fair, Elena said simply. I learned that when I was 7 and my father died. Fairness is a fairy tale we tell ourselves to make the randomness of existence bearable. Then I want the fairy tale, Marcus said. I want you to be cured. I want us to have the life we planned. I want to marry you and grow old with you and fight over stupid things like what color to paint the kitchen. We never would have fought about the kitchen, Elena said with a small smile. I'd have let you pick whatever you wanted and then passive-aggressively complained about it for years. That sounds perfect, Marcus said, his voice breaking. That sounds like everything I want. Elena reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the lines of worry that had appeared over the past few days. We don't get perfect, but maybe we get something else. Maybe we get these moments, the ones where we're honest with each other, where we stop pretending we're not terrified and just be. I love you, Marcus said. I know I don't have the right to say that anymore, but I need you to know. I love you so much it feels like my chest is cracking open. I love you too, Elena whispered. I never stopped. Even when I hated you, I loved you. That's the really unfair part. I couldn't turn it off, no matter how much I tried. They stayed like that until Elena fell asleep, her breathing evening out into the rhythm Marcus remembered from 1,000 other nights. He carefully extracted himself and covered her with the blanket, pressing a kiss to her forehead before leaving the room. In the living room, Carmen was cleaning up from dinner while Miguel sat on the couch, staring at nothing. She's asleep, Marcus reported. Good, Carmen said. She needs rest for tomorrow if you're really taking her to see the ocean. We're going, Marcus confirmed. I'll arrange everything, medical equipment, emergency contacts, whatever she needs. Can I ask you something? Miguel said suddenly. Why now? Why are you here now when you couldn't be bothered before? It was a fair question. Marcus sat down across from him, choosing his words carefully. Because before, I thought I had time. I thought Elena would always be there, waiting for me to get my priorities straight. I took her for granted in the worst possible way, and I'm ashamed of that. But now time is running out, and I've realized that nothing else matters. Not my company, not my reputation, not any of the things I convinced myself were important. Just her. What happens after? Miguel asked quietly. After she's gone? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He hadn't let himself think that far ahead, couldn't imagine a world without Elena in it. I don't know, he admitted. I guess I'll figure it out when I have to. But right now, I'm just focused on making sure she has whatever she needs, that she's not alone, that she knows she's loved. Miguel studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, I'm still not sure I trust you, but I can see you're trying. That's something, at least. It's all I can do, Marcus said. His phone buzzed, a message from Vanessa. Board is getting restless. They want to know when you're coming back. Henderson is making noises about calling a special meeting to discuss leadership succession. What should I tell them? 6 months ago, that message would have sent Marcus into immediate crisis mode. The idea of losing control of his company, of someone like Henderson, a corporate raider who'd been trying to push Marcus out for years, taking over would have been unthinkable. Now he typed back a single sentence. Tell them I'm not coming back. Do whatever you need to do to keep the company running. My priority is elsewhere. Vanessa's response came immediately. Are you sure about this? Marcus looked toward Elena's closed bedroom door, thought about the woman sleeping on the other side, the limited time they had left together. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He turned off his phone and set it face down on the table. Tomorrow they'd go to the ocean. Tomorrow he'd show Elena that he'd finally learned the lesson she'd been trying to teach him for 5 years. That presence mattered more than presence. That time was more valuable than money. That love required showing up, not just saying the words. He just wished he'd learned it soon enough to give her the future she deserved instead of just a few fleeting weeks at the end. Have you ever realized too late that you'd been taking someone for granted? Share your story in the comments below. The next morning arrived with the kind of crystalline September weather that made New York City feel like a miracle, cool and bright, with a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Marcus woke up on the couch to find Elena already awake, standing by the window in her pajamas, watching the neighborhood come to life below. You're up early, he said, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. I couldn't sleep, Elena admitted. I kept thinking about the ocean, about how many times I've told myself I'd go on vacation, take a real break, and I never did because there was always another patient, another crisis, another reason to put my life on hold. We're going today, Marcus assured her. Nothing is going to stop us. Promise. Elena turned to look at him, and in the morning light, she looked heartbreakingly young and fragile. I promise. They left 2 hours later in a rented Range Rover that Marcus had specially equipped with medical supplies and a portable oxygen tank, just in case. Carmen insisted on packing enough food for a week despite Marcus's protests that they'd only be gone for the day. Miguel had to work, but made Elena promise to take pictures. The drive out to Montauk took longer than Marcus had planned because Elena insisted on stopping at every interesting roadside attraction. A farm stand selling apple cider, an antique shop filled with dusty treasures, a small diner where they ate pancakes that tasted like nostalgia and butter. "This is perfect," Elena said, maple syrup on her lips, her eyes bright in a way they hadn't been for days. "This is exactly what I wanted." Marcus watched her across the table, memorizing every detail. The way she laughed at his terrible jokes, the way she hummed along to the oldies playing on the diner's jukebox, the way she seemed to come alive when she wasn't confined to hospitals and bedrooms. By the time they reached the beach, it was late afternoon. The summer crowds had thinned out with the arrival of September, leaving the sand relatively empty. Marcus parked as close to the beach as he could manage, then came around to help Elena out of the car. "I can walk," she protested, but she leaned on him anyway, and he was grateful for the excuse to touch her. They made their way slowly across the sand, Elena stopping every few feet to catch her breath. Marcus could feel her trembling with effort, but she refused to turn back. Finally, they reached the water's edge. Elena kicked off her shoes and stepped into the surf, gasping at the cold. "It's freezing," she laughed, the sound carried away by the wind. "It's September in New York," Marcus pointed out. "What did you expect?" "I don't care. It's perfect." Elena waded in deeper, the water soaking the hem of her jeans. She closed her eyes and tilted her face toward the sun, her arms spread wide as if she could embrace the entire ocean. Marcus watched her and felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. This was what he'd been missing all those years he'd been chasing success. These moments of pure, uncomplicated joy. The way Elena could find beauty in the simplest things. The way she made him see the world differently, more clearly, with less focus on what came next and more appreciation for what was right in front of him. "Come here," Elena called, reaching for him. Marcus kicked off his own shoes and joined her in the water, taking her hands. They stood there together, the waves pushing and pulling at their legs, the salt air sharp in their lungs. "Thank you," Elena said softly, "for bringing me here, for coming back, for trying." "You don't need to thank me," Marcus replied. "This is where I should have been all along." "But you're here now," Elena said. "That counts for something." She pulled him closer, and suddenly they were dancing, swaying together to music only they could hear, just like they used to in his penthouse kitchen at midnight when they couldn't sleep. Elena rested her head on his chest, and Marcus wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if he could keep her safe from everything that was coming. "Marcus." "Yeah. Kiss me." He pulled back just enough to see her face, to make sure she really meant it. Her eyes were clear and certain, and there was no hesitation when she rose up on her toes to close the distance between them. The kiss was salt and sweetness, desperation and hope, goodbye and hello all tangled together. It tasted like everything Marcus had lost and found again, like coming home after being lost for too long. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. "I've missed you," Elena whispered against his lips. "I've missed us." "We're here now," Marcus said. "We're together now. That's what matters." They stayed on the beach until the sun started to set, painting the sky in impossible shades of orange and pink and purple. Elena had grown tired, her energy flagging, so they sat in the sand with Marcus's jacket wrapped around her shoulders and watched the light fade. "It's beautiful," Elena murmured, leaning against him. "I'm glad I got to see this one more time." "There will be more sunsets," Marcus said fiercely. "This isn't the last one." But even as he said it, he could feel Elena growing weaker in his arms, could hear the slight rattle in her breathing that hadn't been there that morning. Time was running out faster than either of them wanted to admit, and all Marcus could do was hold her close and pretend that love could be enough to keep her here. The drive back from Montauk should have been peaceful, Elena dozing against the window, the sunset gilding everything in golden light, the satisfaction of a day well spent. But halfway through the journey, everything changed. Elena woke with a gasp, clutching her chest, her face contorted in pain. "Marcus," she managed to choke out. "Something's wrong." Marcus immediately pulled the car over onto the shoulder, hazard lights flashing. "What kind of pain? Where exactly?" "Chest. Tight. Can't." Elena couldn't finish the sentence, her breathing coming in short, panicked gasps. Marcus grabbed the portable medical kit from the back seat with shaking hands, pulling out the oxygen mask and fitting it over Elena's face. He checked her pulse, rapid and irregular, exactly what Dr. Okonkwo had warned them about. Cardiac arrhythmia, possibly the beginning of heart failure. "I'm calling 911, he said, already dialing. Elena grabbed his wrist, shaking her head violently. Through the oxygen mask, her words came muffled but clear. "No hospital. Home. Please. Elena, you need medical attention." "No," she insisted, pulling the mask aside. "I'm not dying in an ambulance or an emergency room. I'm not. Marcus, please. Take me home." Every instinct screamed at Marcus to ignore her, to get her to the nearest hospital, to do everything possible to keep her alive. But he'd promised to respect her choices, and the terror in her eyes was worse than the physical pain she was experiencing. "Okay," he said, his voice steady even though his hands were shaking. "Okay, we'll go home. But I'm calling Dr. Okonkwo, and if she says you need to go to the hospital, you're going. Deal?" Elena nodded, replacing the oxygen mask. Marcus drove faster than was probably safe, one hand on the wheel, the other on his phone, as he explained the situation to Dr. Okonkwo. The oncologist's instructions were calm and precise. Keep Elena on oxygen, monitor her breathing, get her home where the home health nurse could assess her. If her condition deteriorated further, they'd have to override her wishes and call an ambulance. The drive took 45 minutes that felt like 45 years. Marcus kept glancing over at Elena, watching her chest rise and fall, terrified that each breath might be her last. She kept her eyes closed, focusing on breathing, one hand pressed against her chest as if she could physically hold her heart together. When they finally pulled up to Elena's building, Carmen was already waiting on the street, pacing anxiously. Marcus must have unconsciously called her, or maybe it was just mother's intuition that something had gone wrong. "Mija." Carmen rushed to the passenger side as Marcus helped Elena out of the car. "What happened?" "Hard episode," Elena managed to say, still wearing the oxygen mask. "I'm okay. Just need to rest." But she wasn't okay. Marcus could see the grayish pallor of her skin, the way her lips had taken on a bluish tinge despite the oxygen. She could barely stand, even with his support, and he ended up carrying her up the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment because she refused to wait for the ancient elevator. The home health nurse, a capable woman named Patricia who'd been a trauma nurse before transitioning to home care, was already there, having been summoned by Dr. Okonkwo. She had Elena connected to a portable EKG within minutes, checking vital signs with practiced efficiency. "Severe arrhythmia," Patricia confirmed, studying the readout. "Heart rates all over the place. Blood pressure is low. Dr. Rodriguez, you're going to need to stay in bed for the next few days. No exertion, even walking to the bathroom. I'm setting up a bedside commode." "No," Elena protested weakly. "I'm not an invalid. I'm not. You're a patient who just had a significant cardiac event," Patricia said firmly but kindly. "I know you're a doctor, and I know you're used to being in control. But right now your body is telling you to slow down. You need to listen to it." Elena looked at Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "This isn't how I wanted to spend my time. I wanted to dance and go to museums and actually live, not be stuck in bed like you're dying?" Marcus finished gently, sitting beside her and taking her hand. "Elena, you are dying. That's the reality we're working with. But that doesn't mean we can't still make the most of whatever time you have. It just means we have to be smarter about it." "I hate this," Elena whispered. "I hate being weak. I hate that my body won't cooperate. I hate that one trip to the beach nearly killed me." "But we went to the beach," Marcus reminded her. "We saw the ocean. We kissed in the waves. That happened, and no one can take it away from us." Carmen, who'd been hovering anxiously in the doorway, came over and smoothed Elena's hair back from her forehead. "Mija, remember what you told that little boy last year? Tommy, the one with brain cancer? When he was upset about being in a wheelchair." Elena closed her eyes. "I told him that life isn't about what we can't do. It's about finding new ways to do what matters." "So we find new ways," Carmen said simply. "You want to see museums? We bring the art to you. You want to dance? We play music, and you move however your body allows. You want to live? Then you live right here, in this bed, with the people who love you." Over the next hour, Patricia got Elena stabilized with adjusted medications and strict instructions. Dr. Okonkwo called to check in, her voice grave as she explained that the cardiac event had likely accelerated Elena's timeline significantly. Days to weeks, not weeks to months, the oncologist said quietly, speaking to Marcus in the hallway while Elena dozed. The heart is weakening faster than we anticipated. Combined with the cancer, her body is shutting down. I'm so sorry. Days to weeks. Marcus had to grip the wall to stay upright. How do I tell her? He asked. You don't, Dr. Okonkwo said. She's a doctor. She knows. That's why she's so angry. She can feel it happening, can feel her body failing. The kindest thing you can do is let her pretend she doesn't know for as long as she needs to. After the call ended, Marcus stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at nothing. Somewhere in the apartment, he could hear Carmen praying in Spanish, her voice a soft murmur of desperate hope. From Elena's room came the steady beep of the heart monitor, each sound a reminder that time was measured now in heartbeats, and heartbeats were finite. He should call his mother, update his brothers, check in with Vanessa about the company. But none of that mattered. Nothing mattered except the woman in the other room, fighting for every breath. Marcus pushed open the door to Elena's room. She was awake, staring at the ceiling, tears sliding silently down her temples into her hair. Hey, he said softly, pulling the chair close to her bed. I'm scared, Elena whispered. Marcus, I'm so scared. Today on the beach, I felt almost normal. And now I can barely breathe without oxygen. How did it happen so fast? I don't know, Marcus admitted. He wanted to lie, to reassure her, but she'd asked for honesty. Patricia says it's common for things to accelerate quickly with cardiac involvement. Your heart is working too hard, and it's exhausted. Poetic, isn't it? Elena tried to smile. All those years of encouraging patients to follow their hearts, and mine is the one giving up on me. Your heart isn't giving up, Marcus said fiercely. It's just tired. It's carried you through 32 extraordinary years, saved hundreds of children, loved deeply and generously. It's earned the right to rest. I don't want it to rest, Elena said, her voice breaking. I want it to keep beating. I want more time, Marcus. I want all the things I didn't get to do. I want. She stopped, looking away. What do you want? Marcus prompted gently. Elena was quiet for so long he thought she might have fallen asleep. But then she turned back to him, her eyes clear and devastatingly honest. I want to marry you, she said. I know that's crazy. I know we've been broken up for months, and I'm dying, and it doesn't make practical sense. But that's what I want. I want to be your wife, even if it's only for a few days. I want that one thing that we never got to have. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the chest. Elena, you don't have to answer now, she said quickly. I know it's asking a lot. I know you probably think it's just the illness talking, me being emotional and irrational. But I've thought about it, Marcus. I've thought about what I want my life to mean, however short it is. And I want it to mean that I loved you and you loved me, and we made that official. Not for tax purposes or legal reasons, but just because I want to be yours. One more time. One last time. Yes, Marcus said without hesitation. Elena blinked. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Today, tomorrow, whenever you want. I'll call a judge right now if you'll have me. Marcus moved from the chair to sit on the edge of her bed, taking both her hands in his. Elena, you're not asking too much. You're giving me something I don't deserve, the chance to be your husband, to call you my wife. Even if it's only for a little while, that's more than I ever hoped for after I lost you. You're sure? Elena searched his face. You're not just saying yes because I'm dying and you feel guilty? I'm saying yes because I love you, Marcus said simply. Because I've loved you since the moment you called me out for eating overpriced strawberries at that charity gala. Because you made me want to be a better man, and I failed at that for a long time, but you're giving me another chance. And because when I imagine whatever comes after this, after you're gone, the only thing that will give me any comfort is knowing that I got to call you my wife, even if just for a moment. Elena started crying in earnest now, and Marcus gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of all the wires and tubes connecting her to machines that were keeping her alive. When? She asked against his chest. I don't want to wait. I don't know how much time I have, and I want this. I want to marry you before I'm too sick to enjoy it. How about the day after tomorrow? Marcus suggested. That gives us time to arrange everything, get the license, find someone to perform the ceremony, invite your family. Unless you want something bigger. No, Elena said immediately. Just family. Just the people who matter. And Marcus? I don't want a hospital wedding or something depressing. I want it to be beautiful. I want to feel like a bride, not a terminal patient. Then that's what you'll have, Marcus promised. The most beautiful wedding, right here in this apartment if that's what you want. Flowers and music and everything you deserve. And a dress, Elena added, almost shy. I know it's silly, but I've always wanted to wear a wedding dress. Even if it's just for a few hours. You'll have a dress, Marcus assured her. The most beautiful dress in the world. They held each other as the evening darkened into night, making plans in whispered voices. Small details that suddenly felt enormously important. Elena wanted white roses, her favorite. She wanted her mother to do her hair the way she used to for special occasions. She wanted Miguel to walk her down the aisle, even if the aisle was just the length of her small living room. What about you? Elena asked. What do you want? I just want you to be happy, Marcus said honestly. That's all I've ever wanted. That's not an answer, Elena chided. There must be something you want for our wedding. Marcus thought about it. I want to write my own vows, he said finally. I want to tell you everything I should have said years ago when I still had time to make it right. You have time now, Elena reminded him. Maybe not as much as we'd like, but we have right now. That's what matters. Carmen knocked softly on the door, carrying a tray with soup and bread. Mija, you need to eat something. You haven't had anything since those pancakes this morning. Mommy, sit down, Elena said. We have something to tell you. Carmen set down the tray, her expression wary. What is it? Did the doctor call with worse news? No, actually. Elena smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen since the cardiac event. Marcus and I are getting married. Day after tomorrow. And I want you to help me get ready. Carmen's hand flew to her mouth, tears immediately streaming down her face. Mija, are you serious? Completely serious, Elena confirmed. I know it's fast, and I know it might seem crazy, but… It's not crazy, Carmen interrupted, pulling her daughter into a careful hug. It's perfect. It's what should have happened a year ago if you both hadn't been so stubborn. She turned to Marcus. And you, Mijo, you're sure about this? You're not just doing this because she's sick. I'm doing this because I love her, Marcus said. Because I should have married her 2 years ago when I first proposed. Because she's the only woman I've ever wanted to spend my life with, however long that life might be. Carmen hugged him next, fierce and warm. Then we have a wedding to plan. 2 days isn't much time, but we'll make it work. I'll call the priest. No priest, Elena interjected. Just a judge or officiant. Something simple and civil. I'm not feeling particularly religious these days. Carmen looked like she wanted to argue but nodded. Okay, civil ceremony. But we're still doing this properly. You'll have flowers and music and a proper celebration. Nothing too big, Elena said. I don't have the energy for a big production. Small but beautiful, Carmen agreed. Now eat your soup before it gets cold. You need your strength. After Carmen left to start making phone calls, Elena picked at her soup while Marcus sat beside her, both of them processing the enormity of what they'd just decided. Are we crazy? Elena asked. Getting married when I'm dying? Probably, Marcus admitted. But I think maybe the only sane response to an insane situation is to do something that feels right, even if it doesn't make logical sense. When did you get so philosophical? Elena teased weakly. When I fell in love with a woman who taught me that life is about more than quarterly earnings and market share, Marcus replied. You changed me, Elena. Maybe not fast enough, but you did change me. Good, Elena said, because I'm going to need you to be strong for what comes next. After the wedding, things are probably going to get worse quickly. Patricia explained the progression. More pain, more difficulty breathing, possibly organ failure. It's not going to be pretty or peaceful. I can handle it, Marcus said, though he wasn't sure that was true. Can you? Elena looked at him intently. Marcus, I need you to promise me something. When it gets really bad, and it will get really bad, I need you to let me go. I don't want heroic measures. I don't want to be kept alive by machines. I want to die at home, in my own bed, with dignity. Can you promise me that? The request felt like swallowing glass. Elena, promise me, she insisted. I know it's hard. I know every instinct will tell you to fight, to try to save me. But this is my choice, Marcus. This is how I want it to end. And I need to know you'll respect that. I promise, Marcus said, though the words tasted like ash. When you're ready to go, I'll let you go. Thank you, Elena whispered, relaxing back against her pillows. That means more to me than you know. She fell asleep shortly after, exhausted from the day's events and the emotional intensity of their conversation. Marcus stayed by her side, watching her breathe, counting each rise and fall of her chest like precious gems. His phone buzzed, a text from Vanessa. Henderson called an emergency board meeting for Friday. He's pushing for a vote of no confidence. Marcus, if you don't show up, you could lose the company. Your company. Everything you've built. Friday. The day after the wedding. The day he'd promised to be there for Elena, no matter what. Marcus looked at the woman sleeping in the bed before him. His soon-to-be wife, the love of his life, the person who'd shown him what actually mattered in this world. Then he looked at his phone, at the message representing everything he'd once thought was important. The choice was easier than it should have been. Let them vote, he typed back. Let them take the company if they want it. I'm exactly where I need to be. Vanessa's response came immediately. You're willing to lose everything? Marcus looked at Elena again, her face peaceful and sleep despite everything she was facing. I already lost everything once when I chose the company over her. I'm not making that mistake again. Whatever happens with Whitmore Technologies, it happens. My priority is here. There was a long pause before Vanessa responded. I think that's the first truly smart business decision you've made in years. I'll handle Henderson. You take care of Elena. Marcus set his phone aside and took Elena's hand, feeling her pulse flutter weakly beneath his fingers. In 2 days, she'd be his wife. And however many days they had after that, whether it was weeks or just days, they'd be married. They'd have that much, at least. It wasn't the future they'd planned. It wasn't the life they'd imagined when he'd first proposed with a custom ring and dreams of growing old together. But it was real, and it was theirs, and for now, that would have to be enough. In the doorway, Carmen stood watching them, her hand pressed to her heart. When Marcus met her eyes, she nodded, approval, gratitude, blessing. They were going to make this happen. They were going to give Elena the wedding she deserved. And then they were going to say goodbye. But not yet. Not for 2 more days, at least. For now, Marcus just held Elena's hand and listened to her breathe and tried not to think about the moment when those breaths would stop coming. The next day should have been filled with joy, wedding preparations, excited phone calls, the anticipation of a ceremony that would bind Marcus and Elena together officially. Instead, it became a study in controlled chaos and quiet desperation. Elena woke at dawn screaming. Marcus, who'd been dozing in the chair beside her bed, jolted awake to find her clutching her chest, her face twisted in agony that was horrifying to witness. The heart monitor beside her bed shrieked its alarm, her heart rate spiking dangerously, the rhythm erratic and terrifying. Patricia! Marcus shouted, already reaching for the emergency medications the nurse had left within reach. Carmen, I need help. Patricia arrived first, still in her pajamas from the pull-out couch in the living room where she'd been sleeping. She assessed the situation in seconds, adjusting Elena's oxygen, administering medication through her foreport, speaking in low, calm tones that contrasted sharply with the panic Marcus felt clawing at his throat. It's another arrhythmia episode, Patricia said, checking the monitor. More severe than yesterday. Her heart is struggling. Elena, can you hear me? I need you to try to stay calm. I know it hurts, but panic makes it worse. Elena couldn't respond, couldn't do anything except gasp for air through the oxygen mask, her eyes wild with pain and terror. Marcus took her hand, and she gripped it so tightly he felt bones grind together. I'm here, he said, forcing his voice to stay steady even though inside he was screaming. I'm right here, Elena. You're not alone. Just breathe with me, okay? In and out. We'll get through this. Carmen appeared in the doorway, took one look at her daughter, and immediately started praying. Rapid Spanish that Marcus had learned meant she was terrified beyond words. The episode lasted 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours. Gradually, the medications took effect, Elena's heart rate stabilized, and the screaming pain faded to something more manageable. But the damage was done. Marcus could see it in the exhaustion etched into every line of Elena's face, in the way her eyes had lost some essential spark. I can't do this, Elena whispered once she could speak again. Marcus, I can't. It hurts too much. I thought I could be brave, but I can't. You're the bravest person I know, Marcus said, his voice cracking. I'm not brave. I'm terrified. Elena turned her head to look at him, and what he saw in her eyes made his blood run cold. I want it to be over. I want to stop fighting. I'm so tired. Don't say that, Marcus begged. Elena, please. We have the wedding tomorrow. You wanted to marry me, remember? Just hold on one more day. What's the point? Elena's voice was flat, defeated in a way he'd never heard before. So we can have a few hours of pretending everything's okay before I die anyway? Marcus, look at me. Really look at me. I'm not going to make it to tomorrow. My body is giving up. No, Marcus said fiercely. No, you are going to make it. We are going to get married tomorrow, and then we're going to have however many days we have. Don't give up now. Please don't give up. But Elena had already closed her eyes, turning away from him, shutting him out in a way that felt like a door slamming. Patricia pulled Marcus aside while Carmen sat with Elena. Mr. Whitmore, I need to be honest with you. The episodes are getting more frequent and more severe. At this rate, she might not survive another one. Then we prevent another one, Marcus said desperately. There have to be more medications, something stronger. We're already maxed out on what I can safely give her at home, Patricia said gently. If she were in a hospital, maybe we could do more aggressive interventions. But she's explicitly refused that, and as her healthcare proxy, you agreed to honor her wishes. Then I take it back, Marcus said wildly. I revoke my agreement. We're taking her to the hospital right now. Marcus. Patricia's voice was kind but firm. Even if we took her to the hospital, the best they could do is keep her alive a little longer. They can't cure the cancer. They can't fix her heart. All they can do is prolong the inevitable and make her miserable in the process. Is that what you want for her? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. What did he want? He wanted Elena alive and healthy and laughing. He wanted to turn back time and make different choices. He wanted this to be a nightmare he'd wake up from. But what Elena wanted was to die at home, with dignity, surrounded by love instead of machines. No, Marcus finally admitted. That's not what I want for her. Then we make her comfortable, Patricia said. We manage the pain. We give her whatever time she has left, however long that is, and we let her choose how it ends. The rest of the day passed in a blur of medication adjustments and careful monitoring. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes confused. During her clearer moments, she asked about the wedding preparations, whether the flowers had been ordered, if someone had picked up the marriage license from the courthouse. Carmen and Marcus lied and said everything was perfect, even though they'd canceled nothing because they'd hoped, irrationally desperately, that Elena would rally enough to go through with it. By evening, Dr. Okonkwo arrived for a house call, her presence a testament to how serious the situation had become. She examined Elena thoroughly, reviewed all the monitors and medication logs, and then asked to speak with Marcus and Carmen privately in the kitchen. She's dying, the doctor said without preamble. I know you know that, but I need you to understand, we're talking hours to days now, not weeks. Her heart can't sustain much more, and the cancer has progressed to the point where her organs are starting to shut down. The kindest thing we can do at this point is keep her comfortable with palliative care. She wanted to get married, Carmen said, tears streaming down her face. Tomorrow was supposed to be her wedding day. She wanted that so badly. Dr. Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. If she's lucid tomorrow morning, and if she still wants to go through with it, there's no medical reason not to. It might even give her something to hold on to, a reason to fight for a few more hours. But you need to prepare yourselves for the possibility that she won't make it that long. Can we do anything to help her make it? Marcus asked. Anything at all. Keep her comfortable. Keep her calm. Let her know she's loved. Dr. Okonkwo put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. And Mr. Whitmore? If she does make it to tomorrow, and if you do get married, that might be all she was holding on for. Sometimes patients wait for a specific moment before they let go. You need to be prepared for that possibility. The words felt like a death sentence, though Marcus supposed that's exactly what they were. After Dr. Okonkwo left, Marcus returned to Elena's room. She was awake, staring at the ceiling, and when she heard him enter, she turned her head slowly. You talked to Dr. O, Elena said. It wasn't a question. Yeah. She told you I'm not going to make it to the wedding. She said it was unlikely, Marcus admitted, unable to lie to her. But she also said if you're determined enough, you might. And I know how determined you can be when you want something. Elena's laugh was bitter and weak. Determination isn't enough when your body is shutting down, Marcus. I'm a doctor. I know what's happening to me. My kidneys are failing. My heart is barely functioning. My liver enzymes are through the roof. These aren't things you can fight with positive thinking. Then what do we do? Marcus asked, feeling helpless in a way he'd never experienced in his carefully controlled life. We say goodbye now, Elena said simply. Just in case. Because I need you to know some things, and I need to say them while I still can. Marcus moved to her bedside, taking her hand. It felt cold, smaller than it should be, as if she were already fading away. I'm listening. First, I need you to know that I forgive you, Elena said, her voice soft but clear. For all of it, the missed dinners, the broken promises, the way you chose your company over us. I forgive you, and I need you to forgive yourself. Because if you spend the rest of your life drowning in guilt, then what was the point of any of this? I don't know if I can, Marcus admitted. You have to, Elena insisted. Because guilt is just another form of selfishness. It's you making my death about you instead of about me. I don't want that, Marcus. I want you to grieve, and then I want you to live. Really live. The way we talked about. The way you never let yourself before. How am I supposed to live without you? The question came out broken, desperate. The same way anyone lives after losing someone they love, Elena said. One day at a time. One breath at a time. You wake up, and it hurts, and you keep going anyway. And eventually, maybe not for a long time, but eventually, it hurts a little less. And you remember the good things instead of just the loss. What good things? Marcus asked. All I can think about is how I wasted the time we had. Then let me remind you, Elena said, and despite everything, she smiled. Remember the first time you made me laugh? At that gala, when you said the strawberries were worth $500 and I called you out on it. You looked so offended that anyone would challenge you, and then you laughed, and I thought, oh, this one might actually be worth knowing. Marcus remembered. He'd been so used to people agreeing with everything he said that Elena's blunt honesty had been shocking and refreshing. Remember the night we got caught in the rain in Central Park? Elena continued. We were supposed to go to that fancy restaurant for our anniversary, but we decided to walk instead, and then the sky opened up. We were completely soaked, and your suit was ruined, and you just started dancing with me in the rain like we were in a movie. You said it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for you. Marcus remembered, tears streaming down his face. It was, Elena confirmed, because it was spontaneous. Because you forgot about your schedule and your responsibilities and just lived in the moment with me. That's who I fell in love with, Marcus, the man who could dance in the rain. Not the billionaire who was too busy to show up. Promise me you'll remember that version of yourself. I promise, Marcus whispered. And remember this, Elena said, her own tears falling now. Remember that I loved you. Not your money, not your success, not the empire you built. Just you. The boy from Queens who learned to code in a library. The man who held me when I cried about losing patience. The person who made me want to be better, do better, love better. That's who you really are, underneath all the business suits and board meetings. Don't forget him again. I won't, Marcus said, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. I won't forget. They sat in silence for a while, just holding hands, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor that was becoming slower, more irregular. Marcus. Elena's voice was getting weaker now, the medications pulling her towards sleep. Yeah. If I don't make it to tomorrow, if I don't make it to the wedding, I need you to know that in my heart, I'm already your wife. I've been your wife since the moment you said yes when I asked you to marry me. The ceremony is just paperwork. What matters is that we chose each other, even at the end. That counts for something. It counts for everything, Marcus said. Then we're already married, Elena murmured, her eyes drifting closed. In all the ways that matter, we're already married. Remember that, okay? Remember that I died as your wife, whether we had the piece of paper or not. Elena, don't talk like that. You're going to make it to tomorrow. You're going to wake up, and we're going to get you in that dress, and we're going to make this official. But Elena was already asleep, her breathing shallow and labored even with the oxygen, her heart monitor showing a rhythm that was increasingly erratic. Marcus stayed by her side all night, refusing to sleep, terrified that if he closed his eyes, she'd slip away while he wasn't watching. Carmen brought him coffee at midnight, at 3 a.m., at 5:30 when the sky started to lighten with the promise of dawn. It's her wedding day, Carmen said softly as they watched the sun rise through Elena's window. She made it, Marcus. She held on. But when they turned to look at Elena, she hadn't stirred. Her breathing had gotten worse overnight, each breath a struggle, her skin taking on a grayish pallor that Marcus recognized from his father's final days. We should wake her, Marcus said, even though he was afraid to. Afraid that she wouldn't wake up. Afraid that they'd already lost their chance. Carmen nodded and moved to her daughter's side, gently touching her face. Mija, it's morning. It's your wedding day. Time to wake up. Elena's eyes fluttered but didn't open. Mija, please, Carmen tried again, more urgently. Elena, wake up. Marcus is here. It's time for the wedding. Still nothing. Just the labored breathing, the struggling heartbeat on the monitor. Patricia came in to check on them, took one look at Elena's vital signs, and her expression said everything Marcus didn't want to hear. She's slipping into unconsciousness, the nurse said gently. It's her body's way of shutting down, making the end easier. No, Marcus said flatly. No, she fought all night to get here. She wanted this wedding. We're going to give it to her. He turned to Carmen. Call the judge. Tell him to get here immediately. Tell him it's an emergency. Marcus, Patricia started. She's not conscious. She can't participate in a wedding ceremony if she's not awake. Then we wake her up, Marcus said stubbornly. There has to be something you can give her, something to bring her back for just an hour. That's all I'm asking for. 1 hour. Patricia looked at Carmen, who nodded through her tears. Please, Carmen said. My daughter wanted to be a bride. Just for an hour. Can you give her that? The nurse was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing medical ethics against compassion. Finally, she sighed. There's a stimulant I can give her. It might bring her to consciousness temporarily. But Mr. Whitmore, Mrs. Rodriguez, you need to understand what you're asking. Bringing her back now could cause her pain. It might be kinder to let her slip away peacefully. Elena didn't want peaceful, Marcus said firmly. She wanted to live. She wanted to be my wife. And if she's going to die today, and I know she is, I can see it, then she deserves to die having gotten what she wanted. Okay, Patricia said. Okay, but just so you know, this isn't standard procedure. I'm doing this because I can see how much you both love her, and because I think Elena would want it. But after the medication wears off, that's it. No more heroic measures. We let her go naturally. Agreed. Agreed, Marcus said. Patricia administered the injection, and they waited. 5 minutes. 10. Marcus was starting to lose hope when Elena's eyes suddenly opened. Marcus. Her voice was barely a whisper, confused and weak. What's happening? It's your wedding day, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. You made it, Elena. You held on. And if you still want to marry me, we're going to make it happen. Right now. Understanding slowly dawned in Elena's eyes, followed by something that might have been joy if she'd had the strength for it. Really? We're really doing this. We're really doing this, Marcus confirmed. Your mom is getting you ready. The judge is on his way. And in an hour, you're going to be Mrs. Whitmore. If that's still what you want. It's what I want, Elena whispered. More than anything. What happened next was a blur of activity. Carmen helping Elena into the simple white dress they'd ordered, doing her makeup with shaking hands, arranging her hair as best she could with. You spend. And the only question that matters is whether you're spending it on things that actually matter. He had to stop, his composure finally cracking. Vanessa moved to stand beside him, offering silent support. Elena mattered, Marcus said, his voice breaking. She mattered more than anything else in this world. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that I got to tell her that before she died. That she died knowing she was loved. That she died as my wife. He couldn't say anything more. He stepped down from the podium and sat in the front row, next to Carmen, who took his hand and held it tight. Others spoke, Miguel, talking about his sister's fierce protectiveness and terrible jokes. Dr. Okonkwo, sharing stories of Elena's dedication to her young patients. A woman named Sarah, one of Elena's med school friends, who talked about Elena's passion for justice and her refusal to accept that anything was impossible. But through it all, Marcus felt nothing. Just numbness where his heart used to be. The reception afterward was held at a Dominican restaurant Elena had loved, the kind of neighborhood place that felt like family. People ate and talked and shared memories, and Marcus stood in the corner nursing a drink he hadn't touched, wondering how the world could just keep turning when Elena was gone. You need to eat something, Vanessa said, appearing at his elbow with a plate of food he didn't want. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten in 3 days, Marcus. Elena wouldn't want you to. Don't, Marcus cut her off sharply. Don't tell me what Elena would want. She wanted to live. She wanted more time. She wanted a future. And she doesn't get any of that, so what she would want doesn't really matter anymore, does it? Vanessa was quiet for a moment. You're right. I'm sorry. That was insensitive. Marcus immediately felt guilty. No, I'm sorry. You're just trying to help. He stopped, unable to articulate the howling emptiness inside him. "You're grieving," Vanessa said gently. "And you're allowed to. But Marcus, you're also alive. And at some point, you're going to have to decide what you're going to do with that." Before Marcus could respond, Miguel appeared, his jaw set in a way that suggested this conversation wouldn't be pleasant. "I need to talk to you," Miguel said. Outside, they stepped into the alley behind the restaurant, the September evening cool and crisp. Miguel pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands, took a long drag before speaking. "My sister loved you," Miguel said finally. "Even after you broke her heart, even when she should have hated you, she loved you. And I need to know, was it real? At the end, when you came back, when you married her, was it real or was it guilt?" "It was real," Marcus said without hesitation. "It was always real. I was just too blind to see what I had until it was too late." "Too late," Miguel repeated bitterly. "Yeah, that about sums it up, doesn't it? You had 5 years with her, Marcus. 5 years when she was healthy and full of life and would have done anything for you. And you wasted it. You threw it away for your company. And then when she was dying, when there was nothing left to lose, suddenly you showed up. Suddenly you were the devoted boyfriend." "I know," Marcus said. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I failed her when it mattered. But Miguel, those last weeks with Elena, those were the most real weeks of my life. I wasn't there out of guilt. I was there because I loved her, because I couldn't be anywhere else." Miguel took another drag of his cigarette, staring at Marcus through the smoke. "My sister died believing you'd changed. Died believing you'd finally figured out what mattered. Are you going to prove her right, or are you going to go back to your billion-dollar company and forget all about the woman who loved you?" The question hung in the air between them like an accusation. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I don't know who I am without her. I don't know what comes next." "Then figure it out," Miguel said harshly. "Because Elena spent her last days trying to teach you something. Don't let that be for nothing." He dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his heel. "I have to get back to my mother. She shouldn't be alone." Marcus stood in the alley for a long time after Miguel left, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of the question pressing down on him. Who was he now? What came next? He pulled out his phone, a reflex, the same thing he'd done 1,000 times when facing a problem he couldn't solve. There were hundreds of unread emails, dozens of voicemails, texts from board members and investors and journalists asking about his absence. One email caught his attention. From Henderson, the board member who'd been pushing him out. "Whitmore, I'm sorry for your loss, but the company needs leadership. The board voted yesterday to install interim management in your absence. When you're ready to return, we can discuss your future role. But the company can't wait indefinitely for you to sort out your personal life." His future role. In the company he'd built from nothing. They were pushing him out, and 6 months ago, that would have been unthinkable. He would have fought them with everything he had. Now he felt nothing. Just a vague sense that they were right. The company deserved better than a CEO who no longer cared. Marcus scrolled through his contacts, found the number he was looking for, and dialed. "Marcus." Vanessa answered immediately. "Where are you? People are asking." "I need you to do something for me," Marcus interrupted. "I need you to become CEO of Whitmore Technologies." Silence on the other end of the line. And he told them about the wedding, how Elena had fought to stay alive long enough to become his wife, how she'd smiled during the ceremony, how her last conscious hours had been filled with love. A little girl named Mia, the same one Elena had gone back for during the clinic fire, was particularly devastated by the news. "Dr. Elena saved my life," Mia said, tears streaming down her face. She was 7 years old, bald from chemotherapy, but her eyes were bright with the fierce will to live that Elena had always said made the difference. "She told me I was going to be okay. She promised. And you are going to be okay," Marcus said gently, kneeling down to Mia's level. "Dr. Elena made sure of that. She got you out of the fire, even though it hurt her. She fought for you until the very end. And now you need to fight too, for yourself and for her memory. Can you do that?" Mia nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up, like Dr. Elena. I'm going to save people too." "She would have loved that," Marcus said, his own eyes burning with unshed tears. After meeting with the last family, Marcus stood in the hospital hallway where Elena had spent so many hours of her life. He could almost feel her presence here, in the cheerful murals on the walls that she'd helped paint, in the reading nook she'd fought to have installed, in the very air that seemed to remember her kindness. "I miss you," he whispered to the empty hallway. I miss you so much it feels like I can't breathe. But I'm trying, Elena. I'm trying to be the man you believed I could be. His phone rang, Carmen. Marcus, I have Elena's things ready for you. The book, the sweater, some other items I thought you might want. Can you come by? When Marcus arrived at Elena's apartment, his apartment now, technically, though he still couldn't think of it that way, Carmen had everything laid out on the dining table. Elena's favorite novel, 100 Years of Solitude, dog-eared and heavily annotated. The soft gray cardigan she'd worn on countless Sunday mornings. Her medical school diploma. The necklace he'd given her for their first anniversary. And something Marcus hadn't expected. A letter, sealed in an envelope with his name on it in Elena's handwriting. She wrote it a few days before the wedding, Carmen explained. She asked me to give it to you after she was gone. I almost forgot about it with everything that's happened. Marcus's hands shook as he took the envelope. He couldn't open it here, not with Carmen watching. Thank you, he managed to say. For everything. She loved you, Mijo, Carmen said, pulling him into a hug. Never doubt that. And she'd want you to be happy again someday. When you're ready. Back in his own penthouse that night, he'd finally returned, needing some distance from the apartment full of memories. Marcus sat with Elena's letter for an hour before he found the courage to open it. My dearest Marcus, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry for that. Sorry I couldn't hold on longer. Sorry we didn't get more time. Sorry for everything we're going to miss together. But I'm not sorry we found each other again at the end. Those last weeks with you were a gift. You showed up, Marcus. After all the times you didn't, you finally did. And that means everything. I know you, so I know you're drowning in guilt right now. You're probably torturing yourself with what-ifs and if-onlys. Stop it. Life doesn't work that way. We made the choices we made, and some of them were wrong, but we also made some that were right. We loved each other. That was right. I need you to promise me something. Actually, I need you to promise me several things. First, don't let my death destroy you. Grieve. You should grieve. You need to grieve, but don't let grief become your whole identity. You're so much more than the man who lost me. Second, finish my list. Do all the things I wanted to do, but didn't get to. Not because you have to, but because I think you'll discover something important in the process. You'll discover how to actually live, not just exist. Third, and this is the hardest one, fall in love again. Not tomorrow, not next month, maybe not for years. But someday, when you're ready, let yourself love someone new. I won't be jealous, I promise. I'll be grateful that you didn't close yourself off to joy just because I'm not there to share it with you. Fourth, do something meaningful with your wealth and power. You spent years building an empire. Now use it for something that matters. Fund cancer research. Build free clinics. Help kids from neighborhoods like ours who need someone to believe in them. Be the change you want to see, not just the success story you wanted to become. And finally, forgive yourself. For all of it. For the times you weren't there, for the wedding we postponed, for choosing your company over us. I forgave you, Marcus. Now you need to forgive yourself. I love you. I loved you from the moment you made me laugh at that gala until the moment I took my last breath. And if there's anything after this, if consciousness continues in some form, I'll love you beyond that too. You made me happy, Marcus Whitmore. Even with all the pain and disappointment, even with the time we wasted, you made me so happy. Thank you for that. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for being my husband, even if only for 16 hours. Thank you for loving me enough to let me go on my own terms. Now go live. Really live. For both of us. All my love, always. Elena. P.S. The sunrise from the Brooklyn Bridge is supposed to be spectacular. Take a picture for me. Marcus read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face, Elena's words carving themselves into his heart. She'd known him so well, had anticipated exactly what he'd be feeling, and had given him a roadmap for how to survive losing her. He looked at the list again, at the items still unchecked. And he made a decision. He would do them all. Every single one. Not just to honor Elena's memory, but because she was right. He needed to learn how to live. And maybe, somewhere in the process of checking off her list, he'd figure out how to be the man she believed he could become. The man who showed up. The man who was present. The man who understood that time and love were the only currencies that actually mattered. He owed her that much. He owed himself that much. Tomorrow, he'd start. Tomorrow, he'd dance at a club like he was 25 again, even though he'd never felt older in his life. Tonight, He'd just hold her letter and her cardigan and cry for everything they'd lost, and everything they'd found, and everything that would never be. Tomorrow, he'd begin living again. For both of them. 3 months after Elena's death, Marcus stood outside a nightclub in the meatpacking district, feeling absurdly out of place. The bass thumped through the walls, young people in trendy clothes lined up behind velvet ropes, and Marcus, wearing jeans and a simple black shirt instead of his usual tailored suits, wondered what the hell he was doing. Dancing at a club like he was 25 again. Item number 2 on Elena's list. He'd spent the past 12 weeks methodically working through the other items, each one teaching him something he'd needed to learn. The Michelin-starred restaurant had taught him that expensive food meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. He'd eaten alone, left a massive tip, and donated the cost of the meal times 100 to a food bank in Elena's name. The Met had been harder. He'd stood in front of Elena's favorite painting, The Death of Socrates by Jacques-Louis David, for 3 hours, trying to understand what she'd seen in it. A woman in her 70s had eventually sat beside him and explained that Elena had loved it because it showed dignity in death, choosing principle over survival. "Your wife talked about this painting every time she visited," the woman had said. She said it reminded her that how we die matters as much as how we live. Marcus hadn't corrected her assumption that he was a widower who'd lost his wife after many years together. In his heart, that's what he was. The picnic in Central Park had been beautiful and lonely. He'd brought Elena's favorite foods, spread them on a blanket near Bow Bridge where they'd had their first kiss, and ended up giving most of the food to a homeless man who reminded him of his father. The Brooklyn Bridge sunrise had been transcendent. The city waking up in shades of pink and gold, the water reflecting light like liquid fire. He'd taken the photograph Elena requested, had it printed and framed, and it now hung in his penthouse where he saw it every morning. He'd finished reading 100 Years of Solitude, crying at the ending that Elena had never gotten to read. In the margins of the final pages, she'd written, "Endings are inevitable. What matters is the story we tell along the way." And he'd visited her father's grave with Carmen, standing in the quiet Queens Cemetery while Elena's mother talked to her husband's headstone about their daughter, about how proud he would have been, about how much she missed them both. That left 2 items, dancing at a club and kissing someone in the rain. Marcus had been avoiding both because they felt like betrayals. How could he dance when Elena would never dance again? How could he kiss someone else when she was the only person he'd ever wanted to kiss? But Elena's letter had been clear, live. Really live. For both of us. So here he was, about to go into a club he'd never have entered in his previous life, trying to honor the memory of the woman who'd taught him that life was meant to be experienced, not just survived. "Marcus." A familiar voice made him turn. Vanessa stood a few feet away, dressed far more appropriately for the venue than he was. "I thought that was you. What are you doing here?" "Finishing Elena's list," Marcus admitted. This was one of the things she wanted to do. Dance at a club like she was 25 again. Understanding dawned on Vanessa's face. "And you're trying to do it for her." "Something like that." "Well, you can't go in alone looking like that," Vanessa said, gesturing to his outfit. "You'll be sitting in a corner feeling miserable the whole time, and that's not what Elena would have wanted." She took his arm. "Come on. I'll dance with you. We'll give Elena the night she wanted." Inside, the club was overwhelming, lights strobing, music so loud Marcus felt it in his bones. Bodies pressed together on the dance floor in ways that seemed more like ritual than recreation. He immediately wanted to leave. "Don't," Vanessa said, reading his expression. "Don't run. Feel it. Let yourself be young and stupid and free for once in your life." She pulled him onto the dance floor, and Marcus went reluctantly, feeling awkward and exposed. He didn't know how to do this, how to just let go, how to move without purpose or calculation. "Stop thinking," Vanessa shouted over the music. "Stop being Marcus Whitmore, former CEO. Just be Marcus, a guy at a club who needs to remember what fun feels like." Marcus closed his eyes and tried. He let the music wash over him, let his body respond without his mind controlling every movement. And slowly, gradually, he felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been clenched tight since Elena died. He danced. Not well, not gracefully, but honestly. And for the first time in months, he felt something other than grief. Not happiness, exactly, but maybe the memory of what happiness used to feel like. A faint echo of joy. Vanessa was laughing, spinning under his arm, and Marcus found himself laughing too. Actually laughing, the sound foreign to his own ears. Other dancers joined them, a spontaneous group of strangers moving together, and Marcus let himself be part of it. Just another person in the crowd, not special or important, just human. The song changed to something slower, and Vanessa pulled him close. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Alive," Marcus admitted, surprised by the truth of it. "For the first time since she died, I actually feel alive." "Good," Vanessa said. That's what she wanted. "Marcus, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Elena called me 2 days before the wedding. I never told you because everything happened so fast, and then she died, and there was never a right time." Marcus's heart clenched. "What did she say?" "She said she was worried about you, about what would happen after she was gone. She said you had a tendency to drown in guilt and responsibility, and she was afraid you'd spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for things that weren't your fault." Vanessa met his eyes. "She asked me to watch out for you, to make sure you actually lived after she died, instead of just existing." "That sounds like her," Marcus said, his throat tight. "She also said something else," Vanessa continued. "She said you deserved to be happy again, that you deserved love again. And she made me promise that if you ever seemed ready, if you ever seemed open to the possibility, I'd encourage you to take that chance." "I'm not ready," Marcus said automatically. "I know," Vanessa agreed. "But someday you might be. And when that day comes, I need you to know that it's not a betrayal. Elena wanted you to love again. She wanted you to have everything you gave up when you chose work over her. That was her gift to you, permission to have the life she couldn't." They danced in silence for a while, and Marcus thought about Elena's letter, about her instruction to fall in love again someday. It had seemed impossible when he'd first read it. How could anyone else ever compare to Elena? How could he ever open his heart to that kind of vulnerability again? But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe it wasn't about comparison or replacement. Maybe it was about understanding that love wasn't a finite resource, that loving someone new didn't diminish what he'd felt for Elena. They left the club around midnight, Marcus's ears ringing, his body tired in a way that felt good rather than exhausting. On the street outside, the November air was sharp and cold, and Marcus felt more present in his body than he had in months. "Thank you," he told Vanessa. "For tonight. For everything. For running the company while I fell apart." "You didn't fall apart," Vanessa corrected. "You grieved. There's a difference." She hesitated. "Can I ask what you're going to do now? The board is getting restless. They want to know if you're coming back or if they should make my position permanent." "Make it permanent," Marcus said without hesitation. "The company is yours, Vanessa. You've earned it. I'm done with that life. What life are you going to have instead?" Marcus thought about Elena's fourth instruction. Do something meaningful with your wealth and power. He'd been thinking about this for weeks, an idea forming slowly but surely. "I'm starting a foundation," he said. "The Elena Rodriguez Whitmore Foundation for Pediatric Cancer Research and Treatment. Free clinics in underserved neighborhoods. Scholarships for medical students from low-income families. Funding for experimental treatments. Everything Elena would have done if she'd had more time." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "Marcus, that's perfect. That's exactly what she would have wanted." "I need to do something that matters," Marcus said simply. "I spent 15 years building wealth for its own sake. Now I want to spend the rest of my life using that wealth the way Elena would have, to help people who need it most." "She'd be so proud of you," Vanessa said. "I hope so," Marcus replied. "I'm trying." Setting up the foundation consumed the next 2 months. Marcus threw himself into it with the same intensity he'd once applied to building Whitmore Technologies, but with a crucial difference. This time, he was present. He met with families affected by pediatric cancer. He visited hospitals and clinics. He listened to doctors and nurses about what resources they needed most. And slowly, purpose began to replace grief. Not erase it. The grief was still there, a constant ache in his chest, but coexist with it. He could miss Elena and still do good work in her name. He could carry his love for her into everything he built going forward. Carmen became his partner in the foundation, her practical wisdom and neighborhood connections proving invaluable. They opened the first free clinic in Washington Heights, in the same building where Elena's regular clinic had burned down. At the opening ceremony, they unveiled a mural of Elena surrounded by children, her smile captured in vibrant colors that seemed to bring light to the whole block. "She would have hated this," Miguel said, standing beside Marcus and staring at his sister's face painted 3 stories high. "She always said she didn't do her work for recognition." "I know," Marcus agreed. "But she would have loved that the clinic exists. That kids in this neighborhood will have access to care they couldn't afford otherwise. That matters more than her discomfort with recognition. Miguel was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry I was so hard on you. After she died, you've really done it, Marcus. You've become the person she always believed you could be. I'm trying, Marcus said. Every day I'm trying. The foundation grew quickly, funded by Marcus's fortune and his newfound understanding that money was only valuable if it was used for something meaningful. Within 6 months, they'd opened 3 more clinics, funded 2 research studies into childhood leukemia treatments, and established a scholarship program that would send 20 students from the Bronx and Washington Heights to medical school fully funded. But there was still one item left on Elena's list: kiss someone in the rain. Marcus had been avoiding it, had almost convinced himself he could skip this one. How could he kiss someone else when Elena was the only one he wanted? How could he betray her memory that way? But a year after her death, on what would have been their first wedding anniversary, Carmen pulled him aside after the foundation's annual fundraiser. Mijo, I need to tell you something, she said, taking his hand. Elena talked to me the day before the wedding. She was so weak, barely conscious, but she made me promise to tell you something if you couldn't move on. Marcus's heart clenched. What did she say? She said that loving her didn't mean you couldn't love anyone else. She said your heart was big enough for multiple loves, and she didn't want to be the reason you closed yourself off to connection. Carmen squeezed his hand. She specifically mentioned the list. She said if you finished everything else but couldn't bring yourself to kiss someone in the rain, I should tell you that she gave you permission. She wanted you to experience that joy again. I don't know if I can, Marcus admitted. You don't have to force it, Carmen said gently. But if the opportunity arises, if you meet someone who makes you feel something again, don't sabotage it out of misplaced loyalty. Elena is gone, Marcus. You're still here, and you deserve to have a full life, not just half of one. The opportunity arose 3 weeks later, in the most unexpected way. Marcus was at Memorial Hospital visiting Mia, the little girl Elena had saved during the fire. She was doing well, her leukemia in remission, her spirit as fierce as ever. Her mother, a woman named Isabella, had become friendly with Marcus during his regular visits. She was a widow herself, having lost her husband to a workplace accident 2 years prior. They'd bonded over shared grief, shared determination to honor the people they'd lost by living fully. Mia wants to be a doctor, Isabella told Marcus as they watched her daughter play with other children in the hospital's family lounge. She talks about Dr. Elena constantly, about how she's going to save people just like Dr. Elena did. Elena would love that, Marcus said. She sounds like she was an amazing person, Isabella said. The way you talk about her, there's so much love there. She was lucky to have you. I was the lucky one, Marcus corrected. She changed my entire life, made me realize what actually matters. Isabella turned to look at him, her dark eyes thoughtful. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you think you'll ever love someone again? Or was Elena it for you? The question should have felt intrusive, but it didn't. Maybe because Isabella understood loss in a way most people couldn't. I don't know, Marcus said honestly. A year ago, I would have said no. Elena was everything. But lately, I've been thinking that maybe love isn't about finding another Elena. Maybe it's about being open to something different. Someone different. That's very wise, Isabella said. And very scary. Terrifying, Marcus agreed. They shared a smile. Mommy, can we go home now? Mia called out. I'm tired. Of course, Mia more. Isabella stood, gathering her things. Marcus, thank you for visiting. It means so much to Mia. And to me. Anytime, Marcus said. As they walked toward the elevator together, Isabella's phone rang. She answered, her expression shifting to concern. Okay, I understand. Yes, I'll wait for you to reschedule. She hung up with a sigh. My ride fell through. The friend who was supposed to pick us up has car trouble. I can drive you, Marcus offered without thinking. It's no trouble. Are you sure? We're all the way in Inwood. I'm sure. They made it to the parking garage before the sky opened up, a torrential downpour that seemed to come out of nowhere, the kind of sudden autumn storm that drenched everything in seconds. They ran for Marcus's car, laughing at the absurdity of it, Mia shrieking with delight as the rain soaked through their clothes. Marcus got Mia settled in the back seat, then turned to make sure Isabella was okay, and stopped. She was standing in the rain, her face tilted up to the sky, laughing with pure, uncomplicated joy. Water streamed down her face, plastered her hair to her head, and she looked absolutely beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with conventional beauty and everything to do with being vibrantly, genuinely alive. Their eyes met, and something passed between them: recognition, possibility, the terrifying and exhilarating acknowledgement of attraction. "I'm sorry," Isabella said, suddenly self-conscious. I love the rain. It makes me feel like anything is possible." Marcus thought about Elena's list, about the final item he hadn't been able to complete, about Carmen's words and Elena's letter, and the permission he'd been given to live fully instead of just survive. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. Isabella's eyes went wide. "What?" "I'm sorry, that was—" Marcus started to backtrack, suddenly mortified. "That was inappropriate. You're Mia's mother, and we barely know each other, and I shouldn't have." "Yes," Isabella interrupted. "Yes. Yes, you can kiss me," she said, moving closer. "I've wanted you to for weeks, but I didn't think you were ready. I didn't think you could see me as anything other than Mia's mother." "I see you," Marcus said, his heart pounding. "Isabella, I see you. And I'm terrified because Elena was everything, and I don't know if I can do this again. But I want to try. If you're willing to be patient with me while I figure it out." "I'm willing," Isabella said softly. "Marcus, I loved my husband. Losing him broke something in me I thought could never be fixed. But grief doesn't have to be the end of our stories. We're allowed to find joy again." Marcus leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, giving himself time to be sure. And then he kissed her, gently at first, then deeper, rain streaming down both their faces, washing away guilt and fear, and the belief that loving Elena meant he couldn't love anyone else. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Marcus realized he was crying. "Are you okay?" Isabella asked, concerned. "Yeah," Marcus said, wiping his eyes though the rain made it pointless. "Yeah, I think I am. For the first time in a year, I think I might actually be okay." In the back seat, Mia made a disgusted sound. "Gross. Grown-ups kissing." They both laughed, the tension breaking, and Marcus felt something inside him shift. Not letting go of Elena, but making room for something new. Something that honored her memory by refusing to let grief be the only story he told. That night, after dropping Isabella and Mia home, Marcus returned to his penthouse and stood in front of Elena's photograph, the one from their wedding day, her smile radiant despite everything she'd been facing. "I finished your list," he told her picture. "All of it. Every single item. And Elena, I kissed someone today. In the rain, just like you wanted. And I felt guilty, but I also felt alive. I felt like maybe I could do this, have a life after losing you." He pulled out her letter, read it again for the 100th time since her death, lingering on the words. "Fall in love again. I'll be grateful that you didn't close yourself off to joy just because I'm not there to share it with you. I met someone," Marcus continued, talking to the photograph as if Elena could hear him. "Her name is Isabella. She's a widow. She has a daughter, Mia, the girl you saved from the fire. She's not you, Elena. She'll never be you. But she makes me want to try again. Want to be open to possibility. Is that okay?" The photograph didn't answer, of course. But Marcus could almost hear Elena's voice in his head, saying what she'd said in her letter. "That's what I want for you. A full life. Real joy. Love without limits." "Thank you," Marcus whispered. "For everything. For loving me. For teaching me what matters. For giving me permission to live after you're gone. I miss you every single day, but I'm going to be okay. Because of you, I'm going to be okay." He went to bed that night feeling lighter than he had in months. Not happy, not yet, but moving toward it. Carrying Elena's memory forward, while also opening himself to new possibilities. It wasn't the ending he'd wanted, Elena alive, both of them growing old together, building a life full of shared moments and accumulated joy. But it was an ending Elena would have approved of. Marcus finding his way back to life, honoring her memory by refusing to let grief consume him, carrying forward the lessons she'd taught him. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. What does it mean to truly honor someone's memory, holding on or learning to let go? Share your thoughts in the comments. 2 years after Elena's death, Marcus stood in the same chapel in Washington Heights where her memorial service had been held. But this time, the atmosphere was entirely different, joyful, celebratory, full of life instead of grief. The Elena Rodriguez Whitmore Foundation was hosting its annual gala, and the space had been transformed with flowers, twinkling lights, and photographs documenting all the lives that had been touched by Elena's legacy. 3 free clinics now operated across New York City. 47 students were attending medical school on full scholarships. 2 groundbreaking research studies into pediatric cancer treatments had been funded, with promising preliminary results. And hundreds of children had received care they otherwise couldn't have afforded. But the evening's main event was something special. The dedication of the Elena Rodriguez Whitmore Children's Hospital in the Bronx, a state-of-the-art facility that would provide free comprehensive care to children in underserved communities. It had taken 2 years of planning, fundraising, and construction, but it was finally ready to open. Marcus moved through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, but his mind was elsewhere. Carmen had called him that morning with news that had shaken him to his core. "Mijo, I found something," she'd said. "Elena's old laptop. I was going through her things, finally ready to sort them, and I found video files. Marcus," she recorded messages. "For you. For me. For Miguel. She made them during those last weeks, when she thought you weren't paying attention." Now, tucked into Marcus's jacket pocket was a USB drive containing those videos. He hadn't watched them yet, wasn't sure he was ready to see Elena alive again, hear her voice, face the reality of what he'd lost all over again. "Marcus." Isabella appeared at his elbow, looking stunning in a deep blue dress that brought out the warmth in her brown skin. They'd been dating for 18 months now, taking things slowly, both of them carrying the weight of past loves and learning how to build something new without betraying the memories they held. "Dr. Okonkwo is looking for you. She wants to introduce you to some potential donors." "Thanks," Marcus said, squeezing her hand. "How's Mia doing?" "She's in heaven," Isabella laughed. "Carmen has her helping with the silent auction, and she's taking her job very seriously. I think she's raised more money than anyone else just by being adorable." Marcus smiled. Mia was 9 now, her leukemia still in remission, her dream of becoming a doctor growing stronger every day. She'd been the first child to tour the new hospital, and her excitement had been infectious. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" Isabella's tone shifted, becoming more serious. "Of course. The USB drive Carmen gave you this morning. Are you going to watch it?" Marcus should have known Isabella would notice. She'd become adept at reading him over the past year and a half, understanding his moods and fears in ways that both comforted and terrified him. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me wants to. I want to hear her voice again, see her face. But part of me is afraid it will undo all the progress I've made, send me spiraling back into grief. Or maybe it will give you closure," Isabella suggested gently. "Maybe it's the goodbye you never really got to have." Before Marcus could respond, Miguel appeared, microphone in hand. "Marcus, we're ready for your speech." The crowd quieted as Marcus took the stage, looking out at the hundreds of people who'd gathered to celebrate Elena's legacy. He saw familiar faces, Dr. Okonkwo, Patricia the nurse, dozens of Elena's former colleagues. He saw the families of children who'd been saved by the foundation's work. He saw Carmen in the front row, tears already streaming down her face, Miguel beside her looking proud and sad all at once. 2 years ago, Marcus began, I stood in this same space and said goodbye to the most extraordinary person I've ever known. My wife, Elena, died of cancer at 32 years old, and when she died, I thought my world had ended. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Elena was a pediatric oncologist who dedicated her life to saving children. She worked 70-hour weeks, she fought for her patients with everything she had, and she never gave up, even when the odds were impossible. She saved hundreds of lives during her career, and she did it with grace, compassion, and a fierce determination that nothing was impossible if you cared enough. The audience was completely silent, hanging on his every word. When Elena died, I realized I'd wasted so much time, Marcus continued. I'd been so focused on building a company, on accumulating wealth and power and success, that I'd forgotten what actually mattered. Elena tried to tell me, over and over again. She asked me to be present. She asked me to show up. She asked me to remember that time with people we love is the only currency that matters. And I didn't listen. Not until it was too late. His voice caught, and he had to stop for a moment. Isabella gave him an encouraging nod from her seat. But here's what I've learned in the 2 years since Elena died, Marcus said, stronger now. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. Elena's death was a tragedy. She deserved so much more time, so much more life. But her death also taught me something crucial, that how we spend our time, how we use our resources, how we show up for each other. These things define us more than any amount of success or wealth ever could. He gestured to the photographs around the room, images of smiling children and dedicated healthcare workers. This foundation, these clinics, the hospital we're dedicating tonight, this is Elena's real legacy. Not the years she lost, but the lives she saved and continues to save through the work we're doing in her name. Every child who gets treatment they couldn't otherwise afford, every medical student who gets an education that would have been financially impossible, every research breakthrough that brings us closer to a cure. That's Elena, still fighting, still saving lives, still making the world better. The audience applauded, many wiping their eyes. Tonight, we dedicate the Elena Rodriguez Whitmore Children's Hospital, Marcus said. It's a state-of-the-art facility that will provide free comprehensive care to children in the Bronx and surrounding areas. It represents a $15 million investment, but more importantly, it represents hope. It represents the belief that every child deserves excellent health care, regardless of their family's ability to pay. It represents everything Elena fought for during her life. He looked directly at Carmen. Elena's mother asked me once what I was going to do with my grief. Was I going to let it destroy me, or was I going to transform it into something meaningful? I chose transformation. And I hope Elena would be proud of what we've built in her name. She would be, Carmen called out, her voice thick with emotion. Mijo, she would be so proud. Marcus stepped down from the stage to thunderous applause, and the evening continued with testimonials from families helped by the foundation, an auction that raised another $2 million, and a video tour of the new hospital that left hardly a dry eye in the house. But through it all, Marcus felt the weight of the USB drive in his pocket, Elena's final messages waiting to be heard. It was nearly midnight when Marcus finally returned to his penthouse, exhausted but fulfilled. Isabella had offered to come up with him, but he'd told her he needed some time alone. She'd understood without him having to explain. She always did. Marcus poured himself a whiskey, sat on his couch with his laptop, and stared at the USB drive for a long time before finally inserting it. There were 5 video files, each labeled with a name, Marcus, Carmen, Miguel, Dr. Okonkwo, and one labeled simply, anyone who needs to hear this. Marcus's hands shook as he clicked on the file with his name. Elena appeared on the screen, and Marcus's breath caught. She was sitting in her bedroom, wearing the gray cardigan he now kept in his closet, her hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes, but her expression clear and focused. This had been recorded sometime during those final weeks, before the wedding, when she'd still been able to sit up on her own. "Hi, Marcus," Elena said on the video, and hearing her voice again after 2 years made Marcus's chest constrict painfully. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And I'm sorry for that. I'm so sorry I didn't get more time with you." She paused, looking directly at the camera, directly at him, with those dark eyes he'd loved so much. "I asked Carmen to give you this after some time had passed. Not immediately, because I know you, and I know you'd watch it over and over, torturing yourself. But after a while, when you've started to heal, I wanted you to hear some things." Elena adjusted the blanket around her shoulders, clearly cold despite it being summer. "First, I need you to know that marrying you was the best decision I ever made. Those 16 hours as your wife were the happiest of my life. And I know that sounds sad, that I only got 16 hours of marriage, but Marcus, they were perfect. You gave me exactly what I needed when I needed it. You showed up. After all the times you didn't, you finally did. That's what I'll carry with me wherever I'm going." Tears streamed down Marcus's face, but he couldn't look away. "Second, I need you to stop feeling guilty," Elena said firmly. "I know you, Marcus Whitmore. I know you're probably drowning in what-ifs and if-onlys. Stop it. We made our choices, both of us. I chose my career too. I chose my patients over date nights. I chose the clinic over vacations. We both prioritized work because we both thought we had time. We were wrong, but that doesn't make either of us villains. It makes us human." She coughed, reaching for water off-screen, and Marcus could see how much the effort of recording was costing her. "Third, and this is important, I want you to fall in love again." Elena's voice was gentle but insistent. "Not tomorrow, not next year, but someday. When you're ready. When you meet someone who makes you feel alive again. Marcus, my death doesn't mean your life should end. You're only 34 years old. You could have another 50 years ahead of you. Please don't spend them alone because you think loving someone else would dishonor my memory." She leaned closer to the camera, as if she could reach through the screen to him. "Loving someone new doesn't diminish what we had. Love isn't finite. Your heart is big enough for multiple loves, for multiple chapters. I got to be one chapter of your life, a beautiful, complicated, imperfect chapter. But there are more chapters to come, and I want them to be filled with joy and connection and all the things we didn't get to have together. Marcus sobbed openly now, Elena's words breaking through the last walls of guilt he'd been carrying. Fourth, use your wealth and power for something that matters, Elena continued. You spent so long building an empire. Now build a legacy. Help people who need it. Make the world better. Be the change you want to see, not just the success story you wanted to become. I know you can do this, Marcus. I've always known you had greatness in you. Not the kind measured in dollars, but the kind measured in lives changed. She stopped, looking exhausted, and Marcus could see her considering whether to continue. Finally, she took a breath and went on. And finally, I need to tell you something I never said enough when I was alive. Thank you. Thank you for loving me, even imperfectly. Thank you for making me laugh, for challenging me, for seeing me as more than just a doctor or a woman, but as a whole, complicated person. Thank you for the Sunday morning pancakes, and the terrible jokes, and the way you'd pull me close when I couldn't sleep because I was worrying about a patient. Elena's own tears started falling now. Thank you for coming back. For those last weeks when you were fully present, fully there with me. You gave me the gift of being seen and loved at my most vulnerable. Not everyone gets that. I got that because of you. She wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. I love you, Marcus Whitmore. I loved you when you were an arrogant tech genius who thought money could solve everything. I loved you when you were the broken man who realized too late what he'd lost. And I loved you when you came back and showed me that people can change, that redemption is possible, that love can survive even death. Elena looked directly into the camera one last time. So live, Marcus. Really live. Finish my list. Fall in love again. Build something beautiful. And know that wherever I am, whatever comes after this, I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of the man you're becoming. The video ended with Elena blowing a kiss to the camera, and then the screen went black. Marcus sat in silence for a long time, Elena's words echoing in his head. Then slowly, he opened his phone and pulled up his text conversation with Isabella. I watched the video, he typed. Elena gave me permission, told me to fall in love again, to have a full life, to not let grief be my only story. Isabella, I know we've been taking things slow. I know we both have pasts we're carrying. But I'm ready. I'm ready to stop being cautiously hopeful and start being genuinely committed. If you'll have me. The response came almost immediately. I'll have you. Come over tomorrow for breakfast. Mia wants to make pancakes, and I want to kiss you without worrying that you're still too haunted by the past to fully be present. We'll figure out the rest together. Marcus smiled, genuinely smiled, for what felt like the first time in forever. He looked around his penthouse, at the life he'd built in Elena's absence, the photograph of her on his wall. The foundation's strategic plans spread across his desk. The children's drawings from the clinic that he'd framed and hung beside his expensive art. The evidence of a life being lived with purpose and meaning instead of just accumulation and success. I did it, Elena, he said to her photograph. I finished your list. All of it. I danced at a club. I ate at fancy restaurants and gave the money to people who needed it more. I went to the Met and saw the paintings you loved. I had a picnic in Central Park and watched the sunrise from the Brooklyn Bridge. I finished reading 100 Years of Solitude. I made peace with your father's grave, and I said goodbye to your patients. And I kissed someone in the rain. He walked to the window, looking out at the city glittering below. The same city where he and Elena had built their love story, where she died, where he'd learned to live again. He turned back to her photograph, to that smile that had captured his heart 7 years ago at a charity gala where she'd called him out for eating expensive strawberries. I miss you every single day, Marcus said, his voice breaking. But I'm okay. For the first time since you died, I can honestly say I'm okay. I'm building a life that would make you proud. I'm loving again, carefully but genuinely. I'm showing up. I'm present. I'm doing all the things you tried to teach me. He raised his glass in a toast. Thank you, Elena, for loving me, for teaching me, for giving me permission to live after losing you. Thank you for those 16 hours as my wife. Thank you for the 5 years before that, even the parts where we struggled. Thank you for coming into my life and changing everything. Marcus finished his drink and turned off the lights, ready for bed. Tomorrow he'd have breakfast with Isabella and Mia. Tomorrow he'd review applications for the foundation's new expansion. Tomorrow he'd visit Carmen and watch the video she'd received. Tomorrow he'd continue building the life Elena had wanted for him. But tonight, he let himself remember. The good times and the bad, the joy and the pain, the woman who'd loved him despite his flaws and taught him what actually mattered. "Good night, Elena," he whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for everything. I love you. I'll always love you." And somewhere, in memory and legacy, in the lives she'd saved and the lessons she'd taught, Elena's spirit lived on. 5 years later, Marcus stood in the lobby of the Elena Rodriguez Whitmore Children's Hospital, watching families come and go, children laughing despite their illnesses, parents finding hope in a place designed to heal and support. It was the hospital's 5th anniversary, and the celebration was in full swing. The foundation had expanded beyond even Marcus's ambitious dreams. 10 free clinics now operated across New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. 147 students were attending medical school on full scholarships. 6 groundbreaking research studies had been funded, with 2 leading to new treatment protocols that were saving lives. And the hospital itself had become a beacon of hope, providing comprehensive free care to thousands of children every year. "Papa," a small voice called out, and Marcus turned to see his 3-year-old son, Diego, running toward him with Isabella following behind, laughing. "Papa." He still wasn't entirely used to the title, but it filled him with a warmth he'd thought he'd lost forever. He scooped Diego into his arms, kissing his dark curls, so much like Isabella's. "Hey, buddy, are you having fun? Look." Diego pointed excitedly at the massive portrait of Elena in the lobby, painted by a famous muralist in vibrant, life-affirming colors. "That's Tia Elena. Mommy says she's watching us from heaven." "That's right," Marcus said, his throat tightening the way it always did when he talked about Elena with his children. "Tia Elena is watching, and she's very proud of you." "Why?" Diego asked with the relentless curiosity of a 3-year-old. "Because you're kind and brave, and you care about other people," Marcus said. Just like she did. Isabella joined them, resting her head on Marcus's shoulder, her hand on her pregnant belly. Their second child, a daughter they'd decided to name Elena Carmen, was due in 2 months. When Isabella had first suggested the name, Marcus had cried. "Are you sure?" he'd asked. "Won't it be too much? Too painful?" "It's honoring her," Isabella had said gently. "Marcus, Elena gave you back to the world. She taught you how to love fully, how to be present, how to use your gifts for something meaningful. Naming our daughter after her isn't painful, it's right. It's making sure her legacy continues, not just in this hospital and the foundation, but in our family too." Now, standing in the hospital lobby with his growing family, Marcus felt something he'd once thought impossible: complete peace. He still missed Elena. He thought about her every day, remembered her in moments both big and small. But the grief had transformed from something that consumed him into something that coexisted with joy, with new love, with a life fully lived. "Tio Marcus." Mia appeared, now 14 years old and volunteering at the hospital as part of her preparation for medical school. She was still cancer-free, still determined to become a doctor like Elena. They're ready for the ceremony. The ceremony was the unveiling of a new wing, the Carmen Rodriguez Family Support Center, funded by a massive donation Marcus had made in honor of Elena's mother, who had passed away peacefully in her sleep 6 months prior. The center would provide counseling, housing assistance, and support services for families dealing with childhood cancer, ensuring that financial stress didn't compound their medical crisis. As Marcus gave his speech, looking out at the crowd of donors, families, medical staff, and community members, he talked about Carmen's strength, about Elena's legacy, about the power of showing up for each other in moments of crisis. But mostly, he talked about transformation. 5 years ago, I stood in a hospital room and watched my wife die, Marcus said. It was the worst moment of my life. But it was also, in a strange way, the moment that saved my life. Because in losing Elena, I learned what she'd been trying to teach me all along. That wealth without purpose is empty, that success without presence is meaningless, that building an empire means nothing if you don't also build connections, community, and love. He gestured to the building around them. This hospital, this foundation, everything we've built, it's not mine. It's ours. It belongs to every family who's been helped here, every child who's received care, every medical student who's gotten a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. It's Elena's legacy, yes, but it's also proof that from profound grief can come profound good. That love doesn't end with death. It transforms, it continues, it multiplies. After the ceremony, as the celebration continued around him, Marcus found himself standing alone in front of Elena's portrait. Isabella, understanding his need for a moment, had taken Diego to get some snacks. "I did it," Marcus told Elena's painted face. "I did everything you asked. I finished your list. I fell in love again, and Elena, she's wonderful. She understands that loving her doesn't mean I stopped loving you. She honors your memory every day. And we're naming our daughter after you. Elena Carmen Whitmore. She'll know all about the aunt she never met, about the doctor who saved so many lives, about the woman who taught her father how to actually live." A hand touched his shoulder. He turned to find Dr. Okonkwo, now the hospital's chief of pediatric oncology. "She'd be proud, you know," Dr. Okonkwo said, looking up at the portrait. "Elena, she'd be so proud of everything you've built, everything you've become." "I hope so," Marcus said. "I know so," Dr. Okonkwo corrected, "because I was there at the end. I saw how she looked at you during that wedding. She died knowing you'd finally understood, that you'd finally figured out what mattered. That's a gift, Marcus. Not everyone gets that kind of closure." She was right. Despite the tragedy, despite the pain, Marcus had been given something precious, the chance to say goodbye properly, to make things right, to let Elena die knowing she was loved. "Thank you," Marcus said, "for everything you did for her, for everything you continue to do here." "Thank you for making this possible," Dr. Okonkwo replied, "for turning your grief into something that saves lives. That's the highest form of love, Marcus. Taking your pain and transforming it into healing for others." As the evening wound down and families headed home, Marcus stood on the hospital steps with Isabella, Diego asleep in his arms, watching the sun set over the Bronx. "What are you thinking about?" Isabella asked. "Elena," Marcus admitted, but not in a sad way. "I was thinking about how grateful I am, that I got to love her, that she taught me what she did, that her death, as painful as it was, led me to this, to you, to Diego, to the baby we're about to have, to this hospital, to a life that actually means something." "That's beautiful," Isabella said, taking his free hand. "And very Elena. She always saw possibilities in pain, hope in darkness. She'd love knowing that her death wasn't the end of the story, but a turning point." "It was," Marcus agreed. "The turning point that changed everything." They walked to the car together, a family heading home after a long day, and Marcus felt the weight of gratitude settle over him like a blessing. He'd lost Elena, and that loss would always be a scar on his heart. But he'd also found himself in that loss, had discovered purpose and meaning and a capacity for love he'd never known he possessed. Elena had given him so many gifts during her life, her love, her wisdom, her unwavering belief that he could be better than he was. But perhaps her greatest gift had been her death, and what she'd taught him about how to survive it. She'd shown him that grief and joy could coexist, that loving someone new didn't diminish what he'd felt for her, that building a meaningful legacy mattered more than building an empire. That presence was the greatest gift we could give each other. As Marcus drove home through the city streets, past neighborhoods where the Foundation's clinics operated, past the communities Elena had dedicated her life to serving, he felt her with him. Not as a ghost or a haunting, but as a permanent part of who he'd become. Elena Rodriguez Whitmore had died at 32, far too young, with far too much left undone. But her legacy, in the hospital that bore her name, in the foundation that continued her work, in the families she'd saved, in the man she'd transformed, in the children who would grow up knowing her story, her legacy lived on. And that, Marcus realized, was everything. That was love continuing beyond death. That was showing up, even when the person you were showing up for was gone. That was building a life that mattered, one day at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one choice at a time, to be present instead of absent, to love instead of fear, to live instead of just survive. "Thank you, Elena," Marcus whispered into the gathering darkness. "For everything. For all of it. For teaching me how to live." And somewhere, in memory, in legacy, in the lives still being saved in her name, Elena smiled. Her work was done. His was just beginning. And that was exactly as it should be. How will you choose to spend your most precious resource? Time? Will you save it for someday, or invest it in what truly matters today? Leave your answer in the comments below, and remember, the people we love won't wait forever. Show up while you still can. Thank you for joining me on Marcus and Elena's journey. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another story that will move you. Until then, hold your loved ones close and remember, presence is the greatest gift we can give.